EVP, you're Steve Underwood territory. You're Jeff Fisher territory. You're Floyd Reese territory. You're John Robinson territory. Mike Vrabel never was EVP. So the fact that Ran Carthon was promoted today is not something to overlook. So when it comes to Ran Carthon and the position that we now know he has, no more excuse making, no more passing the buck. Now, I don't think that Ran Carthon should get a pass for last year. I think everybody wants to give him one, but I am not giving him a pass last year, even though, again, it was a little screwed up, and I certainly saw that coming, as did many of you. But you don't get a pass because year one was an unmitigated disaster because the other guy you were working with didn't want to work with you. Sorry, but that's what was signed up. I don't believe in Ran Carthon, full disclosure. I think I've made that abundantly clear. And the Titans are now pumping out the narrative that Ran has made a place where players want to be. They want to come to Tennessee because of Ran Carthon. Really? Which players? Which player said, I want to come here for Ran Carthon? So they can put that in their press release, but again, I have a hard time with that one. But clearly they see something in Ran that I don't see. They make excuses for Ran. They blame Mike Vrabel for this. They blame John Robinson and Ryan Cowden for that. But today I think we should all be able to agree that excuse time around here is over. If they go out in free agency and add some bums again this year, like Aaron Brewer and Andre Dillard, and when you're really like trying to pump up Daniel Brunskill and Azeez Al-Shaair, that tells you the kind of offseason that you had. That's a problem, and Ran has to be accountable for it. Every time I bring up the mistakes of last year, like Andre Dillard or Aaron Brewer or whatever, people, oh, no, that's Vrabel's fault. Oh, okay, so the bad moves are Vrabel's fault, but the good moves are Ran's. That's not how it works, not anymore. If they do something stupid like they did last year, when they spent the entire offseason until the very, very, very end, ignoring the wide receiver position and the kicker position, Ran can't get up to the podium and say he doesn't know what a kicker does. Because I don't know if you watched this last weekend, but field goal kicking matters. In fact, I go back to last year. When I asked him about how to evaluate a field goal kicker, this is what he said last year. When the Titans had made the trade for Nick Folk, they had signed Cade York to the practice squad. They had tried Michael Badgley, who, Ian, I don't know if you've seen this. He's still kicking for Detroit.
I did see that, actually.
The Money Badger. So they've tried Michael Badgley. They tried the two young guys who sucked in training camp. And I asked him, I said, okay, how do you evaluate a kicker? And here's what he said.
If I told you how to develop a kicker, I'd be lying. I've never coached the position, so I don't know how do you develop a kicker. I just know that he's talented. He's made kicks in this league, and he's someone that Coach Ock and his staff want to work with. So that's our job as a personnel department, is to get talented people in here that our coaches want to work with. And how that development goes, you know, when you guys have open practice, you can watch what Ock does, and that'll go into it. But I couldn't tell you how to do it.
No. You need to know how to develop a kicker, how to develop a punter, how to find punt returners that don't drop the ball, how to go figure out offensive line. You need to figure out defense. He might be in charge of the Titans. Oh, something went bad? No, that's not his fault. He's not that anymore. He needs to be accountable. It's all his job. Mike Lombardi, the old general manager, was on Pat McAfee last week, and he said the only guy in the organization whose job it is to win and lose is the head coach and the general manager. He said, offensive coordinator, you lose, he'll get another job. Special teams coach, he'll get another job. Assistant general manager, he'll get another job. It is on the head coach and the GM to win, and that is where we are with Ran Carthon now. So if things are going sideways, like they went sideways this year, and they're trading away star players, well, the GM better talk, because he's the one in charge. Not time to go hide and say, oh, no, this is the coach's time to talk. I'll talk later. No, we want to speak to management now. So it's time to take ownership. That press conference he had, that disastrous press conference a couple of weeks ago. Can't have those anymore. You're in charge of the football team. You draft somebody in the first round. The fans don't like it. The media doesn't like it. They come to the press conference. They ask you upside down, why did you draft that player? Don't get mad at them. Don't finger wag at the fans. Oh, no, we need to be positive, media. No. You made that pick. You defend it. You explain to us what it is that we didn't see, that you see. Because every move you make has your name written on it now. Every single one of them. And I don't ever want to hear that the ball did not bounce their way or that injuries were the problem or anything else that is just the definition of excuse making. Because excuses are for losers. And I am done with losing. So I want to hear, oh, I don't know how to develop a kicker, but I asked Johnny who we should sign as kicker, and so Johnny told me you're the GM, bud. Like, you are the general manager. And not, again, apparently this fake general manager that we were all led to believe had no power and did everything just to placate Mike Vrabel last year. No more excuses. Time to lay out the vision. Time to be accountable. No more passing the buck. No more, well, this is this guy's fault. Oh, no, it's this guy's fault. You're in charge of the coach. And look, when it comes to what the Titans did last year, I'm sure some of that is Vrabel's fault. Okay? Aaron Brewer and the fetish with a 270-pound center, which makes no sense to me. The one position in the NFL where you absolutely, positively have to be fat is in the interior of the offensive line. And they went out and got a 270-pound center. Derrick Henry took those guys out to Vegas, and they went out to dinner. They took a picture, and Derrick Henry, wearing his sex pants, is standing next to Will Levis, who's standing next to somebody else who's standing next to Brewer, and Aaron Brewer and Will Levis look like they were the same size. I mean, you can't have an offensive lineman who looks like they're the same size, minus about 3 inches in height, than your starting quarterback. You can't do that. And so maybe that was Mike Vrabel's fault. I don't know. They wouldn't tell us. But the one thing I'll say about all of this, all these plans that they have, this grandiose vision, today we are on a new path. Have you noticed that they've done this now once a year for each of the last 3 years? 2 years ago, it was, we're signing John Robinson and Mike Vrabel to dueling extensions because we want these guys together. We want them running our football operation for years to come. Then Mike Vrabel got promoted because at that point he was just the head coach, but now he's the head coach plus, like one of these streaming services. Oh, no, that's head coach plus. That's $5.99 a month. And they brought in a new GM and collaboration. Nobody has final say, or we're not going to tell you, or whatever it was. That was the vision. You will see. And now here we are a year later. Rand gets promoted because, again, he's executive vice president now. He's been promoted. And this is the way it's going to work. So they keep telling me all this stuff, but then they keep changing their mind, and they keep changing their mind because some of the things they do, it doesn't seem to work. So, I mean, look, I think, again, full disclosure, I am not a believer in Rand Carthon. That doesn't mean that I'm always right. And it would be a great thing for the Titans if I was not. But I am at least happy that today we have clarity as to who it is that is responsible for the decisions that are made. So from now on, I don't want to hear, well, we don't know if Peter's going to be a guard or if Peter's going to be a tackle. Or you drafted him with the 11th overall pick. You tell me. We don't need to be a secret organization about everything anymore. And today I think they took a step forward to say we're not going to be that. But Rand Carthon is officially the GM now. Again, last year, Louisville basketball is going through their struggles. I know most of you don't care about that. But we have a head coach in Kenny Payne's worst head coach in the history of college basketball. And he got up at the podium last week and he said, oh, no. Because of what I inherited, last year doesn't count. Last year counts. And last year was bad. Now, the circumstances may have affected why they were bad, but it doesn't go away. Last year was bad. They've promoted Rand after the bad of last year. Well, it's time for him to take over this organization, be accountable, and most importantly, be successful. No more excuses, no more injuries, no more ball didn't bounce our way, no more I don't know how to develop a kicker, no more I don't know what the coach does, no more of that. No more dodging the media for an entire season. Those days are over. And if they're not, then we're going to be back here once again 1 year later having the exact same kind of discussions that we seem to have now around this organization every year. 615-737-1025 is our phone number if you want to weigh in, 615-737-1025. So yesterday was about Brian Callahan. Today's about the new power structure. Rand Carthon officially in charge. So now I guess all these Twitter people that are like, let Rand cook, baby. Well, you're going to get your wish. Now, again, as I've said, I am not a fan of Rand Carthon's. I have not seen enough. I have seen very alarming signs in the 1 year that he was. If Vrabel was head coach plus, then Rand must have been GM minus or whatever you want to call it. Some very alarming signs. But there is one thing that I will say about this. Chase asked me, what if Rand is that guy? What if he does make it? We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 615-737-1025, 1025, 1063 The Game.
Our general manager, he's supposed to oversee the coaching staff. It never works well when both people are like talking to the owner. One person's got to be in charge. And I'm not, even though a lot of head coaches like Andy Reid, Bill Belichick, Pete Carroll, Sean Payton, there's a lot of coaches that have GMs that have or had in their contracts, they control all personnel. And but you need it in a contract of a GM like here. Nick Casario has it in his contract. He has final say on all personnel. So you just have to make sure you work well with your head coach. And Brian Callahan needed an experienced personnel guy. That's why the Raiders got Tom Telesco over Champ Kelly. You didn't want a first-time head coach and general manager. I saw it work well here with Kubiak and Rick Smith, but that's rare.
There you go. That was John McClain earlier today on Chase and Big Joe. And let me just say this. I would have preferred that Brian Callahan be over Ran Carthon. And not only because I don't have a lot of faith in Ran Carthon, but also because that's the 49er model. And if we want to be the 49ers, then we should do things the way the 49ers do. And also, all those coaches he mentioned, Jim Harbaugh, Bill Belichick, Pete Carroll. Now, right now, those three guys don't have jobs, but Sean Payton and this one, all those guys have final say. Yes, and they happen to be very good coaches. And I'm hopeful that Brian Callahan will be that guy. But Chase texted me today, and he was like, what if Ran actually is a good general manager? What if everything that we've been sold, this idea that Vrabel, was kicking and screaming about Ran Carthon is true? And what if now Ran, instead of having to worry about what will make Mike happy, Ran can do his thing and pick Zay Flowers over a guard with the 11th overall pick? And I said, great. That would be great. Then I'll see you at the Super Bowl, and I will be happy to root on for my football team. So let me just say this. I want to be wrong about this. I want you guys to say, boy, I tell you used to hammer Ran Carthon that first year. Yeah, I did. I was wrong about that. I don't think I'm going to be. But I am completely, because see, for me, I'm not worried about this kind of selfish satisfaction of being right. To sit there and say, I told you so. In fact, sometimes when I do the I told you so, it doesn't feel good. Like last year's Predators season, that didn't feel good. I was right. I told you so. I knew that coach and general manager, it was time for a change, but I didn't feel good about it. When I felt great was 2017 with the Chicago Blackhawks, when I said there's no way they can beat the Chicago Blackhawks in the playoffs. No way, no how, no nothing. It's not going to happen. Don't worry about it. Forget about it. It's over. And then they swept them and went to the Cup. I had a great time. That's what I want with this. I want to be wrong. And I will feel the exact same way that I felt about being wrong about the Predators in 2017 if the Titans are still playing football this time next year. But again, with a lot of this and a lot of the direction the Titans have been going, I'm like, I don't know if I like that 270-pound center. I mean, I raised to hell when they decided to give Aaron Brewer that $4.3 million. But what happens is sometimes, I guess, like narratives and belief systems, and everybody's different, right? And I am incredibly skeptical. And I think a lot of that has to do with how I was raised watching the Atlanta Braves every year go to the playoffs and lose. So I am incredibly open to the idea of not getting my hopes up because, hey, I've been heartbroken many times in my life. When that kick went through the uprights by Evan McPherson in the 2021 playoff game, I just walked out of the stadium. I picked the Titans to win that game, but I knew something like that could happen. Other people, they love the sunshine and lollipops and rainbows and they just want it pumped day in and day out. And those people, when the team says, hey, Aaron Brewer's going to be our starting center, they're the ones that get really excited about tougher than a $2 steak, baby. They're the ones that are like, hey, Andre Dillard was a first-round pick now. You know, there may be something there. Tim Kelly had his best season with Deshaun Watson. Did you see what he did with Deshaun? So people believe those narratives. And that's where I think we are right now with a lot of people in Rand, which is, well, let's see, but I want to be excited. I want to be positive. I want to be, and that's fine. You can be that way, and you might be right. I'm just telling you, I don't see it. I do not see it. Now, Brian Callahan will have his press conference tomorrow. So far, I have been very impressed when it comes to Brian Callahan and just some of the press picking and offensive linemen, and I have been very impressed. So maybe tomorrow I will be infinitely more hopeful. But as far as Rand in total control, I don't see it. I don't believe it. And I hope I'm wrong. Because as much as I do feel like I don't buy the bull crap and I'm not just all here positive Titans all the time, go team, go. I do root for that football team, just like you guys do. And I'm not one of these media people. I tried to be this when I was younger because I thought this was kind of what you had to be. I tried to be one of those, I'm above being a fan because I am an objective observer of the media that's not it. I'm a fan. I want the Titans to win. I want the Titans to do well. And so I want to be wrong about this. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com, 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in. First texter says, what has Rand done to deserve a promotion? Second guy says, the question is, will you give him credit if things go well? Absolutely. Absolutely. I've always said this. It is always welcome. And look, would I love it? Probably not. But if he's holding up that Vince Lombardi trophy and Terry Bradshaw sticks that microphone in his face and he says, F you, Jared Stillman, well, that would certainly hurt the ego a little bit. I'd be okay with it because the Titans are holding up the Vince Lombardi trophy. And then I come on the air the next day and say I'm wrong. I've never had a hard time saying that I'm wrong. I was talking to somebody about this yesterday. They were like, all Joe ever does is tell you that you never say you're wrong, but you say you're wrong all the time. You said you were wrong about the A.J. Brown trade. You said that you were wrong about Mike Vrabel being the best coach in the NFL when really it was more about A.J. Brown probably than it was Vrabel. You say you're wrong all the time. And I was like, yeah. I do say that. Now I know the text line's going to get flooded with people saying, you don't say that. You don't. Oh, no, goodness gracious. Texter says, I still can't get that clip of Rand and Mike smiling and waving towards the camera after not picking a wide receiver. Is Rand excused because he was playing to Vrabel? You know what? The answer is yes. Apparently, the answer is yes. Everything bad that happened last year doesn't count. And it was all Mike Vrabel's fault. Now, do I believe that? No. But is that what everyone's going to be led to believe? Yes. And that's okay. I mean, I got all these people that are telling me like, hey man, like you'll see with Rand. You'll see. Trust me, you will see. I've had people that are like, just give him another chance. I'm like, what do you mean give him another chance? He's going to be GM next year. So he'll have free agency and he'll have the draft and he's got another chance. It doesn't matter what I say. But I'm not, again, I'm hoping to be wrong on this. Like I want you guys to understand that. Jeff says you were wrong about Matt LaFleur being a bad coach. I don't know about that. Like as far as developing the quarterback, yeah, LaFleur's done a good job. But I saw a stat today in The Athletic. Apparently, Matt LaFleur has led in the fourth quarter of 4 divisional round games and lost them. I'm like, okay, is that really? Yes, that's terrible. Like all these other coaches combined don't. It's like it takes like 18 games or something to like add in all these great coaches that have been in the same spot to equal that amount of losses. Mike McCarthy had 4 games similar as 3-1. I'm like, man, I didn't even know about that. So that kind of, again, that's a LaFleur kind of thing. Texter says, looking at last year's draft, you have to ask yourself if you'd rather have Flowers instead of Spears and how much worse the third-round guard would have been than Peter is. No, I don't. No, I don't. I mean, you go get what Peter Skronsky gave you this year, I'm sorry. Now, he might develop into a good player, but what he gave you this year, you could have gotten for a minimum salary, a veteran guy who after the draft didn't have a team. You could have gotten that. Just like Chris Hubbard at right tackle. I'm sorry. But you didn't have to. No. If you had Zay Flowers, you'd be a much better football team. And I don't know what that means for Spears and Levis and everything else, but you'd be a much better football team. More of your phones. 615-737-1025. Plus, there was another promotion today. Rand got promoted, but there was another promotion that is actually kind of a big deal. And it kind of got buried in all of this, but we'll get to that next. Window Nation. That's right. I'm never wrong about Window Nation because those guys are the best. They're online at windownation.com. Again, winter is here. And so that means that cold air is going to be coming through. If you've got some design ideas, if you want to see what their expert designers will come up with, go ahead and take a look at Window Nation. And again, every time you install new windows, you add value to your home. And you save yourself money because your energy costs will be lower because, again, they will be able to keep your home well, comfortable, and regulated, and you won't be cranking your heat up or cranking your AC up just because of what's going on outside. And these windows are more affordable than you think. No interest for 5 years and 50% off all window styles. So do not wait. Simply call 866-90-NATION. Again, that's no interest for 5 years and 50% off all window styles. 866-90-NATION, windownation.com.
Mike Vrabel doesn't have a job today. What is the disconnect there?
Well, I think Amy spoke to her decision, of making, of the decision she made and why, and that was about her long-term vision, of the organization, and that's really, I think, what it was.
A moment ago, you said the reason primarily he was fired was because of the vision that Miss Amy sees for this team. What was it about Mike that wasn't compatible with that vision?
It's her vision for the organization, not the team. The vision for her organization and how she wants things structured for that. Like I said, Miss Amy's she's made her statement and she's clarified her reasons, and we're here to support her.
She talked about it, you talked about it, but no one's actually defined what it is.
I think at the right moment we'll define that vision, and that's going to come when we hire our next head coach, and we'll be able to give you guys more of a detailed description at that time.
Does Mike not fit the vision today?
Well, again, this was about Ms. Amy's long-term vision, and she stated in her statement how she felt.
Can't share that vision?
No, it's not the time. It's not the time to share that vision today. Because I think as we go through this process, we need to make sure that we have the right person aligned with that, and why we hired that person will fit that vision.
There you go. That was Rand Carthon a couple weeks ago in what was a disastrous press conference, but I am going to give him some credit now in hindsight for all that vision I can't share. Now's not the time. We'll tell you later kind of talk. And I'll tell you why. Because today, Chad Brinker got a promotion. He was assistant general manager, and today he is president of football operations. According to the release the Titans put out, a new role for the organization. He will provide executive leadership and support the entire football side of the organization. His day-to-day responsibilities will include direct oversight of the football departments that address salary cap management, analytics and strategy, communications and information systems. Communications is like PR. And team operations, including security, video equipment, grounds, and he'll also be doing some scouting still, both college and NFL. Well, just so you know, president outranks vice president. Rand Carthon is executive vice president. He is not president. And so that is a very noted here. So the way it was explained to me is Chad Brinker's job. Think about Rich McKay in Atlanta, which is kind of why they haven't hired Belichick yet. That's still all up in the air about the power structure there. Rich McKay is above Terry Fontenot and Arthur Smith, or at least when Arthur was there, he was. But the winning and the losing doesn't affect Rich McKay. If they keep losing, Arthur Blank and Rich McKay decide to fire the coach and the GM. So he's kind of above it all. That's where Chad Brinker is now in terms of the hierarchy. So yes, Rand hired Chad Brinker last year. But Chad Brinker is now technically above Rand, even though Rand picks the players and, again, is responsible for winning and losing. And Chad Brinker kind of oversees all the non-picking the player stuff in the organization and then reports back to Amy. He got a freaking sweet promotion today. But I'm not sure I've ever seen that, where somebody comes in as assistant general manager, hired by the general manager, then gets promoted to president, and the general manager is still general managing. Normally what you see is you see the general manager kick it upstairs to president because, well, now you know that when things aren't going well, you just fire the general manager, fire the coach, go get new ones. People don't blame you. But I guess that's what it is. Michael's up next here on our program. Thank you for waiting. Thank you for calling. What's up, Michael?
Hey, thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
So quickly before I get to my question, it seems like you've used the term player picker, and that's what Rand Carthon is now. He is the designated player picker, and I think that's good to at least have that designation for him for the future so we can see, oh, these guys aren't good. Well, he's the sole one that picked the players, so we can blame him. So I think that's good going forward. But my question is, we've heard some rumors about Mike Munchak possibly coming back to coaching and wanting to coach again, and we've also heard rumors about Brian Callahan possibly wanting to get his dad to come here and coach the offensive line from Cleveland. So I just wanted to ask who you would rather have in that role as offensive line coach, either Munchak or Bill Callahan.
So this is going to sound like a cop-out, and I'm not copping out here, and I appreciate your call. But, I mean, with the coaching staff, when somebody gets hired for a promotion that they deserve, they get a benefit of the doubt. So when Rand Carthon took the job last year as general manager and Mike Vrabel got a promotion because we all thought he was a great coach, they got the benefit of the doubt. That's why when they signed Aaron Brewer, even though it was so stupid that they did that and gave him a second-round tender, it was like, well, they've got the benefit of the doubt, so we'll see if they're right or not. When they signed Andre Dillard, they got the benefit of the doubt. If Rand tries to sign some bozo this year and they come and bring it to us and they say, just trust us on this, we're going to say, no, we trusted you. They don't have the benefit of the doubt anymore. Brian Callahan does. So, as I said yesterday, whether it's defensive coordinator, offensive line coach, quarterback coach, I'm not dictating to him or to anybody that's put into that spot. I'm not going to dictate what the staff should be. If he thinks he and his dad can work together and Cleveland lets his dad out of the contract and, he wants his dad here and he thinks that can be okay and that there won't be some kind of conflict of interest there, whatever, fine. And Lane Kiffin fired his dad. If he thinks that he needs somebody else, if he wants to take the assistant offensive line coach from the Cincinnati Bengals, some guy, I don't even know what his name is, and neither do you. But if he wants to take that guy and make him the line coach, okay, you get benefit of the doubt. But if these guys can't coach, then it's going to be a real quick exit. Just like it was with Vrabel, who told us he was going to hire Jason Howling with almost no experience because this was the best interview I did in 5 years. And now he's not here anymore. So I don't have an answer for you as far as that's concerned about who I would prefer to be the line coach. Trevor, I think, was in Washington when Bill Callahan was there, and yesterday had a lot of positive things to say about him. Great. I've heard a lot of positive things about Mike Munchak. I think we all know that. Great. But I actually trust Brian Callahan with all of his experience in the league. I trust him to know, A, who to work with, and B, who not to work with. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025 here on our program. Chris Sanders, former Titans receiver, will join us next. His reaction to the head coach hiring, his reaction to the Rand Carthon promotion, to the new Chad Brinker situation, and we're getting kind of moving on the offseason here a little bit. We'll do that next. Hey, tune into 94.9 The Fan this Saturday for Vandy basketball. The Commodores are taking on Tennessee at home. Tip-off is at 5 o'clock. Pre-game's at 4:30, and coverage is also available on the 94.9 The Fan app. So we got Chris Sanders joining us, but first we got some nuggets here. Vic Fangio and the Dolphins have mutually agreed to part ways. It sounds like the Dolphins are looking at Brandon Staley. It sounds like Fangio is looking at the Eagles, but who knows? And Jeff Darlington reports, quote, after Mike Vrabel meets with Falcons owner Arthur Blank at Blank's home later today in the Atlanta area, he will fly to Carolina tonight to meet with the Panthers on Thursday. And let me just say this for Vrabel. I would not wish the Panthers on anybody, even my worst enemy. And I don't consider Vrabel my worst enemy. In fact, I like Vrabel. He probably doesn't like me very much, but I like Vrabel fine. But the Panthers, he'd hate it there. Chris Sanders joins us now on the program. Chris, let's start with your initial reaction to the hiring of Brian Callahan.
Dude, there's a couple of things, man. First of all, I'm so excited about the hire. And one thing I love about it, there's two things that I love about the hire. Number one, I love his philosophy. His philosophy is this. He says the teams that win, they pass the ball the best. So now we got a situation to where we kind of know the identity of what our offense is going to look like. We're going to see the ball thrown down the field. We're going to see a lot of receivers catch the football. And then the second thing that I really love about this hire is he develops quarterback. I mean, he coached, not really actually coached Peyton Manning, but he was there with Peyton Manning for 4 years with the Broncos. And also look at Joe Burrow. In 2020, he threw for 2,600 yards, and then his second and third year, he threw for over 4,600 yards and 35 touchdowns. The reason why I share all that stuff right there is he understands how to develop quarterbacks. Now you got a situation with Will Levis that had an okay year this year, and you got Callahan coming in here and develop him. You put some weapons around him and get a good offensive line. Now you're back to where the Tennessee Titans could be. I'm elated about this hire.
So I want your opinion on this because I do think this is important.
Sure.
Let's say with the 7th overall pick, the Titans are on the clock, and on the board they've got a wide receiver graded out at, and I actually listened to Floyd talk about how they do this, 7 out of 10, which apparently like Eddie George is 7 out of 10.
Yes.
On like their grading scale. Like nobody gets a 10, and I think you got to be like John Elway to get a 9. So you're 7 out of 10 at wide receiver still there, and a 7 out of 10 at tackle is there. Which one would you pick? And the reason I ask this question is because when he was with the Bengals, they were in that spot, and they took Jamar Chase over Penei Sewell, and I do think there will be a very good receiver still sitting there with the 7th overall pick.
I think you got to go get a wide receiver. I mean, he was successful when they got Jamar Chase, so I think you want to keep with that same philosophy because I know everybody talks about the offense. Yeah, you got to have an offensive line to protect so the wide receivers can catch the ball. But at the end of the day, I think you can go find some more in the draft or actually find some, in free agent-wise. So, that's a tough decision that they're going to have to make. But at the end of the day, if your philosophy is throwing the football, your philosophy is making big plays down the field, at that 7th pick, if I'm not saying Marvin Harrison is going to be there, I'm not saying that wide receiver from Washington is going to be there, but if one of those guys are there, you got to go get him because he's one of those playmakers that you can't pass up, Jared.
Chris Sanders is with us. What do you think of the promotion for Ran Carthon to executive vice president? But more importantly, we now know that he is, however you want to title it, the official player picker of the Tennessee Titans.
I think it's outstanding. I'm going to kind of give you an illustration. You ever play basketball?
Yes.
Okay, when you play basketball, you ever hear a guy that's kind of dribbling the ball down the court? He says this. He said, "Let me cook." And when he said, "Let me cook," let me do what I do best. And that's exactly what's happening with Ran Carthon. The situation happened last year. He couldn't do what he wanted to. So now he's in a situation now to where he said, "Let me cook. Let me get the players. Let me bring the staff in. Let me bring the people in here so I can put my thumbprint on this organization." I think it's great because now we don't have to wonder, who's making the decision, who's making, the players. It's all on Ran Carthon. So now, we have a situation to where, okay, who's making the decision? Ran Carthon, and I think that's a great job to be.
Why does everybody think that last year Ran wasn't able to, as you would say, cook?
I just think that he came into a situation to where, and I say this respectfully, that it was Mike Vrabel's team. Coach Vrabel wanted to do it his way. He wanted his personnel. He wanted his guys. So I think that with Ran Carthon coming in, he's like, okay, I'm just going to, be the Mr. Nice guy and just let him make the call. So now Ran is in a situation to where, okay, Amy Adams Strunk said, you know what, I'm giving you the keys to the team. I'm giving you the keys for you to make the decision. Now he's comfortable for making the pick. Now he's comfortable with including everybody in to where he can, he can put his fingerprint on his team. So I think it's a great job by him, freeing up to say, you know what, this is my job, and I can put it together like I want to. I think it's a great job by Amy Adams-Strunk to make him in that position.
Doesn't it sound kind of convenient, though, that, oh, no, last year it was all Vrabel's fault?
Oh, no. I didn't say it was Mike Vrabel's fault. I'm just saying that, Mike Vrabel, and I say this in a respectful way, Mike Vrabel wanted to do it his way. And when you have a situation to where you have a head coach that wants to do it his way but doesn't invite anybody else in, I just think that's a recipe for disaster. If I'm a head coach, I want to make everybody better. And the way you make everybody better is you include everybody in and say, you know what, I want your thoughts. I want your philosophy. I want you to help me with this. But at the end of the day, I got to make the decision, but I still want to include you in. So if I include you in and I get your ideas, your thoughts, your techniques, we can build together as a team. But if I'm doing it my way, and it's my way or the highway, then you're going to have a recipe for disaster. That's exactly what I think we saw in this situation.
So I've been highly critical of Rand Chris, but the one thing that I will say is even with him being designated now as the official player picker, I don't have any concern about him and Brian Callahan working together. And I think that he's going to rely heavily on Brian Callahan when it comes to what players they pick. How do you see that?
I think it's going to be great because we always say this quote all the time, great minds work together. I think you got two great minds, two, guys that want to win. I mean, you got, Brian Callahan that has a great pedigree of understanding football, and then you got the same situation with Rand Carthon that has a great pedigree of football. If you guys come together and we work together as a team and everybody knows the direction that we're going, I think it's going to work smoothly. Yeah, you're going to have some bumps in the road. Yeah, you might have some arguments, but at the end of the day, you have a head coach and you have a general manager that makes it about the team. That's a recipe for success. So I think that's a great, great opportunity.
Chris, why do you think we haven't seen Mike Vrabel get a job yet?
I don't know, but I heard you before. I wouldn't want to go to the Panthers because I would not want to go there. I don't know. I just think that, teams are looking. If everybody says all this crazy stuff. Oh, I want to be, I want to develop men and all that crazy stuff. But how can you develop men if you're putting them down? You want to bring somebody in your organization that makes everybody better. I'm not saying Mike Vrabel didn't do that, but at the end of the day, you got to make sure you have somebody in there that does it. I don't know. That's a hard question to answer because I don't know what those teams are looking for. But at the end of the day, he's going to find somewhere, later on down the road.
I do wonder this. How much do you think it helps the quarterback to go back to that system that he ran in college, the Shanahan-McVay system, the West Coast offense? How much do you think it helps the quarterback, or how much do you think it hurts the quarterback to change the offensive staff on him?
I think it's going to help big time because you always want a quarterback to feel comfortable. I mean, if you have a quarterback that feels comfortable, then he's going to make the right decisions. But if he's uncomfortable with the philosophy or the techniques or the things that they want to do, then he's not going to play well. But if he's familiar with what he's done before and familiar, with the scheme of the offense, then he can play with a level of confidence, a level of being comfortable to saying, you know what, I understand this offense. I've been there before, so now you're going to see his game even go even higher because he's done it before. It's kind of like, like riding a bike. You may not ride a bike for about 5 or 6 years, but when you get back on it, it's that comfort level knowing that you've done this before. So now you got a situation to where he's done this before. He's did the 5-step drop before, whatever they have to do with that offense, and he's going to be even better because it's going to take him to a whole different level. Why? Because he feels comfortable.
Chris Sanders, as always, is the best here on the program. Chris, great stuff.
Appreciate
you seem incredibly chipper about all the news around the Titans.
Because I got married, man. I'm still on cloud 27. Let's go.
There you go. Chris Sanders, as always, he's the best, joining us on the program. So I will say this. I think that this is good for Levis. The one thing that bothers me, and look, I complained about Vrabel all the time, and you all know it. And quite frankly, all the people that are complaining about Vrabel now, he probably doesn't even hate those people. I'm sure he hates me. But just this constant, oh, no, that's Vrabel's fault. Ian, it's starting to get a little too much for me.
Say what now?
Just all the blaming Vrabel. It's Vrabel's fault. Well, I can't,
Yeah.
No, Rand wasn't able to do what he wanted to do. That Andre Dillard, that's not his fault. It's like, oh, come on now. And I love Chris, but come on now. I mean, some of that's crazy. One texter said, listen to the Wesley Woodyard interview this morning across the street. He went into tons of detail about the crazy stuff Vrabel did, way more than last time. Let me say this. We've had Wesley Woodyard on. He's bashed Vrabel, and then they shook hands and everything else. All I know about Vrabel is this. I saw Derrick Henry, Will Compton, and Taylor Lewan last week boo-hooing about how much they were going to miss Mike Vrabel and how this is the worst decision the Titans ever made. So I guess they don't feel the same way that Wesley Woodyard did 4 years ago. So that's my way of saying, okay, pass. 615-737-1025. So where do the Titans go from here? We now know who's picking the players. We now know what Chad Brinker's job is. We now know who the head coach is. So where do they go from here? We'll do that next. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios. So yesterday I got on the national media for all this boo-hooing about Mike Vrabel, right? Charlie Weiss and Mike Florio, and oh, this is terrible. Why would you fire Mike Vrabel, the greatest coach who ever lived? Why would you fire him in order to hire Brian Callahan? And I was like, okay. Like, that's ridiculous. Vrabel wasn't that good. Callahan has the resume that would say, hey, he's ready for a head coaching shot. This is not that complicated, and Vrabel is not that sacred of a cow. Today, that was the national media. Today, I feel like we got to talk locally about just the piling on Vrabel. Whether it was Chris Sanders right there basically saying, hey, can't blame Rand Carthon for anything bad that happened last year. And I love Chris, but he's not the only one. Can't blame Rand Carthon. It's not his fault. Blame Mike Vrabel. Blame John Robinson. Blame Ryan Cowden. Blame Vrabel. And so then I had somebody text me who, again, I love, but would have an axe to grind when it comes to Vrabel. And they said, Jared, he should take all the blame. He was the head coach, and it starts and finishes with him. Well, but the general manager didn't do anything last year? So you're telling me Rand Carthon was just there to yell at the media about the Tajay Spears and Will Levis picks that people didn't like? I mean, come on now. Like, when it comes to Vrabel, I think Vrabel's a solid coach. I think that there are a lot of teams that could use the help of a Mike Vrabel. I don't think Carolina is one of them, and I'm not sure Atlanta would be a place where I'd want Mike Vrabel. But I don't think Mike Vrabel's that bad. And everybody today is like, oh, no, Rand, you watch. He's going to be executive of the year, Jared, because Vrabel was holding him back. And it feels too narrative-y for me. It sounds too convenient for me that now it's all Vrabel's fault. So last year it was all Robinson's fault. Now it's all Vrabel's fault. It's probably never all anybody's fault anytime, and that includes Rand. But it's all his fault. So an old strength coach that Vrabel fired is called in. This is Tommy Canavy, the old strength coach, who has always been on Vrabel's rear end. He goes by the Colonel. Our phone line is driven by WilsonCountyHonda.com. Colonel, are you happy that Mike Vrabel got fired?
I'm just wondering why you would ever have Chris Sanders on your show. I could hear people changing the channels.
Chris Sanders is a great man and is very insightful. Thank you very much. Very popular. Did you drop him, Ian? Why'd you drop him?
That was not nice. I like Chris.
I like Chris too, but I mean, again, like, I wanted to hear where he was going to go with that.
Sorry.
Oh, Ian. I mean, he was going to say something stupid. We all know it. I want to know what it is. What was it that he was going to say? I mean, look, you can talk about Chris Sanders all you want, people changing the channel. All I know is that the pregame show, which is the award-winning pregame show, is the reigning champion for best local sports coverage, according to the Tennessee Association of Broadcasters, and that's me, Chris, and Derek. So, I mean, I guess somebody likes listening to Chris Sanders. So I'm going to defend Chris there too. But, I mean, you knew he was going to say something stupid about Vrabel. Oof. Texter says, yes, narratively, as in it doesn't fit your narrative of hating on Rand. Let me say this. I don't think Rand's very good at what he does. I did not feel last year like there were some general manager things that I just looked at and I'm like, oh my God, wait a minute. How did this happen? And again, he goes the entire season and he doesn't talk to the media once, except to talk to the media about how he doesn't talk to the media. Like, really? You got reporters in town, he's not getting back to them, and that's not just me. Like, that's part of the general manager's job of being the general manager. Like, that's part of what being a general manager is. And so he wasn't doing that last year. But again, like I said, if this team stinks this upcoming year and they don't look like they have a clue out there, I mean, I'm sure some of it will be Brian Callahan's fault. Because I don't think it's always somebody's fault. I don't think Vrabel's a terrible coach. I think Vrabel's arrogant, okay? That's what I think Vrabel's big problem was. Not that Vrabel was a terrible coach and that he's never going to win any games, and how could Rand Carthon possibly coexist with Mike Vrabel and all of those things. And that's what it's being made into. Texture says Ian is soft for that. One texture says, I don't understand this. You're just used to J-Rob. Used to J-Rob how? I mean, I don't understand what that has to do with any of this. This yesterday, I said that when it came to Vrabel, that the Titans were right about not trading him. Now, I was never one that sat there and when they fired him said, you lost Mike Vrabel for nothing. How dare you? How could you? How? Because I understood what the rules were. And so I knew that it'd be insanely hard to trade a coach. Like, the only way you could trade Mike Vrabel right now is if he was still your coach today and nobody thought you were trading him and everybody thought that you loved him and Buffalo decided to fire Sean McDermott and called you and said, hey, would you have any interest in trading us Vrabel? And Vrabel has to want to go there. That's the only way. Apparently, Tony Dews, the running backs coach, apparently Tony Dews, I guess, is headed to the Jets. This is Diana Rossini saying that Tony Dews interviewed by the Jets. They haven't offered him the job. Okay, here you go. Zach Rosenblatt says the Jets interviewed Tony Dews for their running back coach position, though they haven't offered him the job yet. And then Diana Rossini says, Tony Dews was loved by players and coaches in Tennessee. He would fit great with Carter and Downing again, Jets making moves to improve their offense. So, no, he hasn't been hired by them yet, but I guess he's on the cusp of that. And that was a very misleading tweet from Diana Rossini at first glance. Do we have, by the way, so a lot of people are talking about this Wesley Woodyard interview. Wesley Woodyard does this like once every couple of years. He comes out from wherever it is that he's hiding, and he just craps on Vrabel. And, I mean, I don't have a problem with it. I crapped on Vrabel plenty. But one thing that I don't like is we see this a lot around draft time where it's like an NFC executive said, we don't like Jimmy because we think he's the kind of guy who picks his nose and eats his boogers. And then all of a sudden that comes out, and everybody assumes that that's what every executive thinks because that's what one executive thinks. So when it comes to Wesley Woodyard, him dumping on Vrabel, again, is nothing new. You know, kind of sounds like a guy with an axe to grind. And all I know is that Derrick Henry, Ian, do we have a cut of them crying about this? Of Derrick Henry and Taylor Lewan and Will Compton sitting on that bus being like, yep, I can't believe the Titans went out there and fired Mike Vrabel on that Bussin' with the Boys podcast. Do we have that?
We do, yes.
Go ahead and play it.
Is that surprising to you? Vrabel getting fired?
Yeah, I'm definitely surprised, because the body of work that, Braves has had since he's been there, these last 2 years have been tough, but I feel like Braves is a great coach. He has a championship mentality. He's a leader of men, and he knows to get the best out of his players. I know it's different in the front office with the personnel that they have, and maybe they have a different vision. I'm not sure. I don't know all the details, but I thought he'll still be the coach. I thought they'll probably just talk it out and make some adjustments as time went forward and for the future of the organization. But it was shocking to me.
I mean, come on now. So it's like, oh, he's this terrible guy. Derrick Henry's the best player the Tennessee Titans have ever had. And he doesn't seem to feel that way. So it's like, again, yesterday, the Charlie Wise, I don't see how this could possibly be an upgrade. Oh, this guy's going to run a modern offense. I think that might be an upgrade. The national people boo-hooing the Titans hiring Brian Callahan and firing Mike Vrabel. Today, the local pile on Vrabel. It's too much. It's too much. And you all know me. I'm not a Vrabel defender, but it's too much. 615-737-1025. Okay. Where do the Titans go from here. Enough Vrabel talk. I know you guys love talking about Vrabel. I like talking about Vrabel too, but enough of that. Where do the Titans go? Now that we know who the coach is, we know who's picking the players, we know the structure of the organization, where do they go next? We'll do that. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
The teams that win the most games are generally the teams that pass the ball the best. That's usually because they have really good quarterbacks and usually because they have guys that can make plays on football outside. And so you're seeing the teams invest in that part of the game really across the board. And, we're no different. We spent really 2 top 35 picks on receivers and on a quarterback. And so we've invested in it as well. But I do think that's the shift in the league these days, is that the passing game has become the focal point.
That was Brian Callahan before the season talking about the Bengals. Yeah, we spent the number 1 pick on a quarterback. We spent, I don't know, what was Chase, the 4th pick? We spent the 4th pick on a receiver, and we spent the 33rd pick on a receiver in T. Higgins. Yeah, passing matters to us. And I'm listening this morning to Robbie and Rexroad, and Paul's like, finally the Titans have a coach who values passing. I'm like, okay. This is where everybody's getting too out of hand with all this stuff. About, if they hear that and they're like, yes, a coach who values passing. Finally, we need that. You mean the last guy who said that as long as I'm the coach, they're not going to trade A.J. Brown? You think he didn't value passing? Do you remember 2019 and 2020? I do. So let's not get carried away there. Now, the question I have, though, with the Titans, with Callahan now in the fold, is where do they go from here? And obviously the coaching staff is the first thing. He'll get asked about it plenty tomorrow. He won't name any names because nobody ever does that unless they've already hired somebody, and he hasn't. But the coaching staff is the immediate thing that everybody will pay attention to. I'm not so worried about the coaching staff. I look at the coaching staff as it's yours. Go ahead, fill it out, and then let me know, because we don't know any of these guys. Oh, yeah, he was the quarterback's coach in Oakland, and then he went from Oakland to Arizona, and now he's the run game coordinator of the Bears. And, there's no way to really know these things. I remember last year when they made all these hires, and everybody wanted to talk about Tim Kelly, and it was like, so how can the guy who was the passing game coordinator last year get a promotion when the passing game was so terrible? And even then it was like, oh, no, you don't understand. And so I don't worry about that. To me, it is evaluating where the team is now. Because I think that we have to look at the Tennessee Titans, quite frankly, as an expansion team. Because that's really what they are. Right now they have a quarterback, a left guard who might be a tackle, who might also be a left guard, who also might not be good. I don't know. A third down running back who can probably be a number 1 running back, but he's going to have a co-pilot. And running backs, you can get them wherever. Unless Spears is McCaffrey, which I don't think he is. They have a veteran receiver, a defensive tackle, an outside linebacker, and a corner. And so it's like, man, they've got a massive roster overhaul coming here in both free agency and the draft. And not everything's going to be fixed in one fell swoop. It's going to take some time. But they are going to need, I expect them to try to win some football games next year. I don't expect to be the Arizona Cardinals next year. So the question then has to be, how do you build around that? And I see everybody already now saying, go get a left tackle in the draft. Go get a left tackle in the draft. Joe Alt, the kid from Penn State. This one, that, yeah, we need it. Just, oh my God, the idea of those two guys together, it'd be great for 25 years. And it's like, it's not that simple. Because what if there's going to end up being tackles in free agency? Good tackles. Not great tackles, because, again, the great tackles usually don't get to free agency. But there's going to be solid tackles in free agency. Solid starting NFL tackles. Then do you have to take the franchise left tackle with the 7th draft choice? Or can you take Rome Odunze, who might be the next Jamar Chase, with the 7th overall pick? Or what about trading out of the 7th overall pick? Trevor said this is a great draft for tackles and receivers. Well, guess what? You need 2 tackles anyways. You probably need 2 receivers. So you've got a really premium pick at 7. And what about trading out? And the answer is right now, none of us know this because none of us have looked, and it's impossible to know what the free agency board is going to say is available. And then after the free agency board, then there's the draft board. Then there are trades. Is Stephon Diggs going to be at Buffalo next year? Doesn't seem like it. So if all of a sudden Diggs pouts loud enough and he wants out of Buffalo, here's a $25 million receiver who's total crybaby, has already bitched his way out of Minnesota, and now he's complaining his way out of Buffalo. Would you trade a third-round pick in order to get Stephon Diggs? You don't have a third-round pick. What about a third-round pick next year? Because they're just trying to get rid of him. You see all the little questions that come up. So when I look at the Titans, I think, okay, where do you go from here? Do you feel like everything needs to be built around the quarterback and we'll worry about defense later? Is it the offensive line is the top priority no matter what, and we'll figure out receiver as we go? Those are the answers that I kind of want to know. What do you value more? A high-end receiver or a franchise left tackle? Because that may be what you're asked with the 7th overall pick. What do you value more? One great player with the 7th overall pick or 4 good players with the 7th overall pick? In 2015, the Titans had the number 1 overall draft choice. And I was like, this is great because whoever the best player in this class is, the Titans are going to be able to get him. Whether it is Joey Bosa or Laramie Tunsil or whomever, they'll be able to get the best player. And I'm not sold on trading out, but at least I know where they sit right now with the number 1 pick, that they'll be able to get the best player. And Floyd said, okay, do you want the best player? Or would you rather have Samari Rolle, Derek Mason, and Michael Roos? And I was like, well, do you think I can get those? He goes, well, Samari was a 2nd-round pick. Roos was a 2nd-round pick. Derek Mason was a 4th-round pick. I'm pretty sure that you can get those picks in this draft. And I'm like, okay, well, that's kind of tough. But then with that pick, the Titans ended up getting Jack Conklin, Derrick Henry, Jonnu Smith, and Corey Davis. And that absolutely is worth the number 1 pick, right? So that's what I wonder with all of this. Like, where do they go from here? Is it about, hey, we need to rebuild and we need to rebuild young? Is it, hey, we need to get veterans in here and then we need to get some good young players in here, but we need to get the veterans around Levis and we need to try to do what the Texans did next year? That's my question. 615-737-1025, more of your phones. 615-737-1025. Plus, there is one thing that the Titans are going to have to answer for us at some point. But I do wonder this, right? When it comes to that tackle. Because everybody keeps talking about tackle, 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 tackle. Mel Kiper's got a new mock draft out. Tackle. What about Brian Callahan's history? We'll get to that next. Twice Daily wants to send you to Italy. That's right. Don't you want to go? Buy any made-to-order Italian sub and use your rewards app, and you'll get entered to win. Visit twicedaily.com/sweepstakes for more info. Every sub is a chance to win, and mobile-ordered Italian subs count 2 times the entry. Twice Daily's made-to-order offerings allow you to get exactly what you want when you want it. So customize sandwiches with all your preferred meats, cheeses, bagels with all the fixings, you name it. Twice Daily has you covered with those made-to-order selections. And download the Twice Daily app today. Enjoy their loyalty program to unlock special discounts, savings, and so much more. It pays to be a member with Twice Daily, where you earn points and save money with every visit. If you're looking for convenience, Twice Daily has you covered. Twice Daily, fresh all day.
The O-line's the big problem field. Certainly a speed receiver is needed, but the offensive line has to be addressed. And that's where you hope, if you're the Titans, either Joe Alt or Olu Fashanu are still there on the board. That, to me, is the biggest problem they have. If you got a franchise young quarterback, you can't keep getting him beat up. Remember, Will had issues at Kentucky that final year with a bad offensive line. Comes to Tennessee with a horrible offensive line. Can you give this kid a break? Can you help him out and keep him healthy for the entire season? The O-line, to me, is the biggest problem for the Tennessee Titans.
Mel Kiper Jr., his first mock draft has dropped, and he's got Joe Alt, the left tackle at Notre Dame, going to the Titans with the 7th pick. And Ian, I can just hear Titans Twitter saying, yes, yes, they've already decided Joe Alt is the greatest left tackle they've ever seen. Yes.
I just think everyone's over Andre Dillard.
Yes.
Don't have
and
to
Dennis
see,
Daly.
And you don't have to see Dillard or Daly anymore. Yeah.
I understand.
Double D, see ya.
I understand. And trust me, left tackle is a legit position to use the 7th pick and get a franchise guy and on you go. I mean, that's a $30 million a year position, and I get it.
Top 10.
But one thing to think about with Brian Callahan is that when he was in Cincinnati, and I've listened to him talk before the draft about what the Bengals may or may not do, it sounds like a guy who's got some serious ownership in that draft, like a guy who's got some authority, which makes me think, and Cincinnati is well known for not having much of a scouting staff and really putting the coaches through the ringer in that. And so the way he talks, it's like, oh, yeah, he's got some skin in this draft. And in Cincinnati, they spent money on the offensive line, but they really didn't spend picks. They drafted Jonah Williams in the first round of the 2019 draft, which is the first year that they were there, where they ended up with the worst team in the NFL so they could draft Joe Burrow. But outside of that 2019 pick, they did not spend one top 45 pick on an offensive lineman, and they spent one top 100 pick, which was tackle Jackson Carman in 2021, and I guess he's played 6 games in the NFL. Now, they spent all kinds of money on Orlando Brown this past year, Ted Karras, Alex Kappa, La'el Collins in the past. I mean, that offensive line that came in here in 2021 and allowed 9 sacks to Joe Burrow, that line was horrendous. We all remember it. I mean, I've joked, but I'm also kind of serious about this, even though it's not likely to happen. But if Floyd was resurrected and he came into the room, the first thing I would say after I awaken from fainting after seeing somebody resurrected, the first thing I would say to him is, dude, the Titans got 9 sacks in a playoff game and lost. Because I'm not sure he could ever imagine that being possible, getting 9 sacks in a game and losing. So we remember how bad that Bengals offensive line was. It cost them the Super Bowl because Jamar Chase beat Jalen Ramsey on one of the last plays of that Super Bowl, but Aaron Donald had Joe Burrow in his hands at that point. That line was atrocious. But again, they didn't spend picks. They spent money. Now, I haven't looked at what free agents will be available on the offensive line this year, and we don't really know because, again, teams will cut guys. Just like you will cut Andre Dillard, teams will cut tackles. Now, they won't cut the great tackles, but they might cut legitimate starting tackles like Donovan Smith, the Super Bowl winning left tackle of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who is now the left tackle of the Kansas City Chiefs. So I don't know who's going to be out in free agency, and again, neither do you. But when it comes to Cincinnati and their rebuilding efforts on the offensive line, it's been money, money, money. Now, where did they get their receivers? The draft. 33rd overall, T. Higgins in 2020. And again, I don't know what pick Chase was. I want to say it was 4th or 5th or something like that.
4th or 5th, yeah.
But Jamar Chase in 2021. And that was a very controversial pick when they took Jamar Chase. Because on one hand, Jamar Chase was a really, really good player. And on the other hand, Jamar Chase was a wide receiver, and they needed offensive line help. And Penei Sewell, who, by the way, is a great right tackle for the Detroit Lions and is only 23 years old, but Penei Sewell was the guy that everybody thought Cincinnati had to go get.
5th.
Chase was 5th. I think Pitts was 4th. And there was quarterback.
It was Pitt's fourth, yeah. I think
Pitts
you're right.
and Chase.
Yep.
So Jamar Chase went with the 5th pick. They needed a lineman, but they didn't draft one. And so keep that in mind. Because one thing I will say, everybody gets excited about drafting and the future and young guys and everything else. But when it goes to having young guys on the line, let's say they do draft a tackle with the 7th pick. So it's a rookie tackle with the 7th pick and a rookie guard with the pick last year. I mean, I want some veteran free agent offensive linemen in here that are better than Daniel Brunskill, because they're going to need that experience in the room. And it's so hard to get young offensive linemen on the same page in the NFL because they never practice in pads anymore. I watched the Football Life documentary with Bill Belichick where they just followed Belichick for the entire 2009 season. By the way, a lot of Floyd in that, including him negotiating with Vince Wilfork and talking to Robert Kraft about where they were on that. But I digress. But in that, Belichick was out there on the practice field talking to the guys saying, when I was with the Giants, we wore pads every Friday. We practiced in pads. And they don't ever practice in pads anymore. They don't do two-a-days. They don't wear pads that much in training camp. They took away a preseason game. So it's hard to develop these linemen. And if you're the Bengals, you got Joe Burrow. Like, it's time to start winning now. So they went out in free agency, and they went out and got the best guys. Now, is their offensive line elite? Absolutely not. But is their offensive line much better because they spent the money on Alex Kappa, and they spent the money on Ted Karras, and they spent the money on Orlando Brown? Yes. So I would just keep that in mind for everybody that's talking about this left tackle, and then Mel Kiper's mocking it and everything else. There will be one of these receivers that are available with the 7th pick. 3 quarterbacks are going to go 1, 2, 3. With the 4th pick, Arizona's probably taking Marvin Harrison Jr. They don't have to take the tackle because they took a tackle last year. They didn't take a tackle and move him to guard. So they don't have to take a tackle. Arizona probably goes Marvin Harrison 4. Well, that means that either a tackle or one of the other 2 receivers, who I both think have just superstar potential in the NFL, Malik Neighbors and Roma Dunze, one of the 2 or both should be available with the 7th pick. If Roma Dunze is the next Jamar Chase, don't you have to take him? Now, I don't think Roma Dunze is the next Jamar Chase. I think he's a step below Jamar Chase. I mean, Chase is a 7. Chase is a 7. But I just, again, we saw what the Bengals did, and it wasn't a problem. Drew says in the text line he wouldn't be opposed to the Titans drafting one of the top 3 wide receivers with the 7th overall pick. Ian, would you be opposed if the Titans drafted a receiver with the 7th overall pick? And again, by that time, we'll know, what they'll do in free agency. But
probably not. No.
I mean, again, you get one of those superstar receivers and don't trade them away. You get one of those superstar receivers, and it's a game changer. Now, look, Trent Williams is a great left tackle, but the 49ers had Mike McGlinchey, who was a day 1 starter for them, leave in free agency, go to Denver, and they're doing just fine. In fact, I don't even know who their right tackle is. But those stud receivers, I mean, that is a different discussion. And I think that was kind of the Bengal way, which was we can draft the stud receivers, we can sign decent linemen. And I would think about that. One texter says Neighbors is the next Jamar Chase. So this is what I'll say about Jamar Chase. When we had those COVID shutdowns and the show went from a show where we could talk about everything to what I used to jokingly dub Titans Today with Jared and Floyd, because there was nothing going on in the other sports, right? It was like, all right, in hockey, Gary Bettman said they won't know until next month at the earliest what they may do. Like, what's that? There's really not a lot to do with that. So we watched so much tape, and we talked so much about the draft. And that LSU team with Burrow and Justin Jefferson and Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Randy Moss's kid at tight end and Cushenberry at center and Kaylavon Chason and Grant Delpit. And I mean, that was an all-time team. that 2019 LSU team. An all-time team. Right up there with those Miami Hurricanes of the early 2000s. I thought Jamar Chase was the best player of the group. And Jamar Chase was too young. Stingley with the Texans, and Jamar Chase was too young to go in the draft. Because he was a sophomore. Everybody else was a junior. So he had to go back to school for a year. He went to like one practice in 2020 and opted out because the team stunk so bad. But I thought he was the best player on that team. So one of the greatest teams I've ever seen. And I thought he was one of the best he was the best player on that team. So when I'm talking about saying somebody is Jamar Chase, like, that's real high praise for me. And you guys know that I love Malik Neighbors, but I can't say he's the next Jamar Chase. And Rome Odunze, so small but fast, and I mean, I love Rome Odunze too. I will say this, I would not be upset if I ended up with one of those other receivers and not Marvin Jr., even though Marvin Jr. is a great player, and I would take him over the other two, just because there's something about Marvin Jr. that I don't love, and I don't know what it is. I can't put my finger on it. 615-737-1025, bunch of phones to get to, 615-737-1025. One thing that I think I know the answer to, but it needs to be said tomorrow when it comes to the Titans. We'll do that next, and your phones. FanDuel Sportsbook is my official sportsbook app. If you have been watching the NFL playoffs from the sidelines, there is still time to get in the game with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. New customers bet this Sunday's conference championship games with $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. Again, I love the story of Detroit, but I don't think they're going to San Francisco playing outdoors and beating the 49ers. I'm just going to say it like that. I mean, the AFC game, I think that is a heavyweight title fight, which I'm excited about. So I'm not going to pick it right now, but I feel very confident in San Francisco. So if you want to follow that pick, go to FanDuel right now. Get started with $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. FanDuel.com/JGM to join today. Again, that's FanDuel.com/JGM. 21 and older in present Tennessee. First online real money wager. Only $10 first deposit required. Bonus issue is non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions do apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line at 1-800-889-9789.
Why, when you drafted an All-America left tackle, did the organization never look at him at left tackle as you struggled at left tackle?
Well, I think the goal for Peter was to be the left guard. And moving him around from a new position to a position that he hadn't practiced, I don't think it was advantageous in his development, and his growth, because he was learning a new position. And from him, he came in, he was an All-American, left tackle in college, but I think, and we talked about this with Peter the other day, at this league, there are bigger, longer players, and the length presents a problem. Now, moving forward, who knows? We may give Peter a look. Peter is a player that I would never bet against and say that he couldn't do something or he couldn't play. But we thought at the time when we drafted him that we could put Peter at guard and he'll be a mainstay.
That was Rand Carthon not explaining why they didn't move Peter. But again, who knows? Now, it's great that they said when we drafted Peter, we thought Peter was a guard. Except that you didn't tell anybody when you drafted Peter that you thought Peter was a guard, which leads to a lot of confusion. Now, maybe it was all Mike Vrabel's fault doing all the lying. I don't know. But again, it's hard when you tell us one thing and then you tell us a year later, no, what actually was true was the opposite of what we said when we said, oh, yeah, there's plenty of time to give Peter a try at tackle in training camp. Oh, yeah, we're going to put Peter all over the place and figure out we want versatile guys. And then they never tried him, and we're stuck watching Jalen Duncan out there. No fault of his own, but Jalen Duncan's out there flailing around trying to stop guys from getting to the quarterback. It's just like, what are you doing there? Now, Brian Callahan was apparently on a podcast, because I think tomorrow the right thing to do will be for the Titans to decide one way or another what Skoronski is or isn't. And I figure this would have been covered in the job interview as to where they plan to play Peter Skoronski. Again, this isn't just some guy. It was the 11th overall pick. And so they need to decide, are they looking this offseason for a left tackle or are they looking for a guard? Because those are two totally different things, and you all know that. If they feel like Peter can be the franchise left tackle, then you don't need to use the 7th overall pick on a tackle, and you can get that receiver. Because you can go sign your guard in free agency, and it should be rather easy to do. It'll be expensive, but it should be easy. But if you think Peter's a guard, now you have to go out and really attack left tackle. And you can't do any of this bullcrap you did last year with Andre Dillard, which was 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Now, here is a podcast that's been making its rounds. This is Brian Callahan before the draft last year talking about what he viewed Skoronski as.
Weird, because I do think the tackle class is different than the last couple of years because there's not the high-end, surefire, top 10 style tackles in this draft. There just isn't. Good players, guys are going to play for a long time, but the best lineman is still probably a guard, and that's the kid from Northwestern.
By the way, they may have to fire him after hearing him say that before a draft. The Titans never say anything like that. They won't even tell us what the vision is at the press conference when you ask them. And he's sitting here saying, yeah, I mean, I don't think any of these guys are top 10 tackles. Now, he didn't have a top 10 pick, so it's probably easier to say that. But I don't think any of these guys are top 10 picks. I think they'll be decent players. The best lineman's probably more of a guard. So maybe after watching his guard tape, maybe Brian Callahan says, no, we want to move him over to left tackle and see, because that guard tape was not pretty. Or maybe Brian Callahan says, I think he's a guard. I think we can coach him into a guard, so he's going to be a guard. And if that's the case, say it tomorrow. I don't think it'll hurt anybody's feelings if you get up there tomorrow and say, and I actually expect him to do this. I really do. To say, no, Peter's going to play left guard for us. Okay? Now, I feel like you blew the pick last year because you don't take a guard with the 11th overall pick. But at least you now know, okay, we've got a guard. So now we've got to find a left tackle. That right there, I am totally fine with. Texter into the text line says, aren't you just going to get mad at Rand Carthon when the line stinks if the Titans pick a wide receiver with the 7th overall pick and they can't get it to him? One thing that truly amazes me is how often people try to predict what my opinion on the radio is going to be. So when it comes to what I'm going to think during next football season, I have no idea because it hasn't happened. This is a read and react job. What happened? Let's react to it. Instead of saying, oh, well, if this happens and this happens, then you're setting it up so you can say, and I'm like, I really don't operate like that. I'm flattered that you think that I'm some sort of magician or chess player that's so cerebral that I'm trying to plan my show 8 months in advance, but I'm really not. So when I see that, I'm like, if they stink next year, I'm sure I'll be mad. And if they're good, I'm sure I'll be apologetic because of how down I've been on the general manager. One texter says the final 4 NFL teams and there isn't one elite receiver in the group. That's not true. Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk are both great, and so is Amon-Ra St. Brown. What are you talking about? Like, those guys are legit. Those are true number ones. And it looks like Zay Flowers is on his way to being a number one in Baltimore. And Kansas City, I don't know if you could beat Kansas City if they still had their number one receiver. Still may not be able to beat Kansas City even if you do. But I mean, you can't tell me. Wide receiver is an incredibly premium position. Like, to me, I think it is number 2 to quarterback now. Quarterback, wide receiver, edge rusher, tackle. Everything else. Well, quarterback, wide receiver, edge rusher, tackle. Corner and defensive tackle are, dropped a little bit lower than that, and then everything else. One texter says, I know you are going to think the opposite of Mike Vrabel and not like a man. Yeah. Well, how's that working for him? I mean, I got to tell you, I'm worried old Vrabel might not be able to get a job. Texter says, I think Vrabel wanted Peter Skronsky to play left guard. You think there's a chance he gets moved to left tackle next year, and that would give them more flexibility with the 7th pick. I don't think they're looking for more flexibility with the 7th pick, and I wouldn't be looking for that either. What I would be looking for is, do I have the answer at left tackle? Right? So, if Peter's going to play left tackle next year, if Brian Callahan has looked at the tape of him as a left guard and has said, you know what, he's not quick enough out there to pull, which I do think is a concern I have. By the way, Ian, did you see Penei Sewell get out there the other day from the right side of the line?
Looking good.
Holy crap.
Moving good. I heard they gave him some type of really big ultimatum this past year to step it up.
Like lose some weight or whatever?
I don't know about that, but just, get his head in the game. Take that next level, that next step.
So, I mean, what I think when it comes to Peter is that may be a concern, that his feet are kind of slow when it comes to pulling and everything else for a guard. Well, I don't know, that's kind of big in these, zone running schemes. So maybe he looks at that tape and says, you know what, he's actually probably better suited at tackle. And he may have some limitations there with some speedy edge rushers, but he may be better off at tackle than he is at guard. Or maybe he watches that Jacksonville tape and says, nope, that's our left guard, and now we know we have to go address tackle, as far as that's concerned. And so I don't know what he's going to pick. But I do think tomorrow they'll be asked, and I do think tomorrow they will tell us. I really think that. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. So the Titans have decided to give Ran Carthon final say on the 53-man roster. Boy, that Andre Dillard signing really convinced them. But while I wouldn't have done it, I do wonder if this is the right choice. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Let me tell all the fine folks out there that we've got even more basketball to be excited about. And we got something to give away, which we'll do next hour. But we got MTSU basketball tonight on 93.3 Classic Hits. That's right. The Blue Raiders are at home taking on Jacksonville State. Pregame is at 6. Tip-off is at 6:30. And coverage is also available on the 93.3 Classic app and at 93.3classichits.com. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3, The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios. So Ran Carthon is officially the player picker of the Tennessee Titans. This drives me crazy across all sports. It's not just football, but it's also hockey, basketball, baseball, whatever. When everybody's got some sort of title, right? Executive, Senior, Vice, Ultimate President. What does that mean? And so in the NFL, some teams have President of Football Operations. Some people have a GM under that. In baseball, some teams have a GM who's like third in command. I can't even keep up with it anymore. In the NFL, who makes the decision with the Rams? Sean McVay, Les Snead? Sometimes blurry. But the Titans eliminated that today, and I am thankful for that, as the Titans decided that, no, Ran Carthon's going to pick the players. So at least they did something right in telling us who picks the players. That's Ran Carthon. Now, I expected that this would be the case. I would prefer it the other way around. Now, Amy Adams Strunk does not like the idea of the head coach being in charge of the roster, as was mentioned in the Athletic story about Vrabel's dismissal. And I get it. She saw it with Jeff Fisher. But Jeff Fisher, and I'd like this to be put down on the record, is and was, as a head coach in the NFL, a complete and total bozo. Right? Sean Payton is not. There's a difference. So I understand. She saw Jeff Fisher when he took over and drafted Chris Henry in the second round and how much of a disaster that was, and I get it. Firing Floyd Reese was a fundamental mistake. But that doesn't mean that some guys aren't more suited for personnel control than others. But there's a couple of reasons why I would have given the personnel control to Brian Callahan. The first is that I don't trust Ran Carthon, and this past year I thought was bad. A guard with the 11th overall pick, Andre Dillard, Aaron Brewer. Like, there's just too many screw-ups that I'm like, wait a minute. You drafted your franchise quarterback after you drafted a guard, and because of that, you're going to have one less year of control? I mean, I got to tell you. That whole year, even though everybody today is piling on Vrabel and saying it was all his fault, and trust me, he is absolutely culpable for some of this. But he's not culpable for all of it. But the other reason why I would have done that is because the 49er model is the coach. The coach is in charge in the 49er model, which is what I think the Titans are going for. Kyle Shanahan runs that show, not John Lynch. And so Ran Carthon comes from that. And so what I would have done is I would have looked at Brian Callahan, who has a personnel background, because being with the Bengals means you do personnel, because they are one of the poorest and cheapest ownership groups in the NFL, the Brown family. He's got some of that. Let him be the final say guy, the face of the franchise guy. Let him be the guy at the top. Let him be your Kyle Shanahan, and let Ran be John Lynch, which I think Ran can do because, again, he watched John Lynch and build from there. And the other reason why I would go with Brian Callahan as the decision maker over Ran Carthon is just the idea of ownership, right? Ran, I think, works more towards collaboration and not wanting to step on somebody's toes, not wanting to say the wrong thing, and quite frankly, not wanting to piss the wrong person off. Whereas Brian Callahan's got this kind of Floyd Reese sense to him, where he says a lot, and I listen to it, and I nod my head like, yeah, those are some really good points. And then I realize, did he really say anything? For instance, let's compare these two. This was Ran Carthon in August, when the Titans were going through that kicker shuffle, and they had traded for Nick Folk, but they had also signed Cade York to the practice squad, and they talked about developing Cade York on the practice squad. So I asked, how does a team develop a kicker? That's something the general manager should be able to express. Here's what Ran said.
If I told you how to develop a kicker, I'd be lying. I've never coached the position, so I don't know how do you develop a kicker. I just know that he's talented. He's made kicks in this league, and he's someone that Coach Ock and his staff want to work with. So that's our job as a personnel department, is to get talented people in here that our coaches want to work with. And how that development goes, when you guys have open practice, you can watch what Ock does, and that'll go into it. But I couldn't tell you how to do it.
Like, that's not funny to me. Like, you're running the team. Like, I need you to tell me, hey, this is how. He oversees the coaching staff now. So instead of, hey, you guys just go see what Craig Aukerman does, that's how we figure this stuff out. Yeah, exactly. That's the problem. Meanwhile, here was Brian Callahan on a Locked On Bengals podcast before the 2022 draft when talking about offensive linemen that they could pick.
As far as offensive line, you can never have enough good linemen. If there's what I meant to preface is by the free agency signings that we've done over the last couple of years has allowed us to be a little more free in the draft, to take whatever those best players are for us, and not necessarily trying to pick to fill a need because we have to have it. I don't think we have to have anybody up front. I think we've got a solid bunch of guys up front competing. But if for some reason that there's an offensive lineman available at any point in the draft that we feel like is going to help us, we certainly wouldn't be afraid to make that selection. There's good linemen in this draft. There's good depth in this draft. There's good developmental prospects kind of all the way around up front. And so if there was one that came up and if they were the best player we thought would help us the most, we certainly would be open to picking that player. And so, it's a little bit of coach speak in a sense. You're talking about best players, but there really is I think what we've done in free agency has really allowed us to be smart and be able to take the players we want in the draft and not necessarily be pigeonholed into having to take a particular position.
I mean, that is a very thorough answer, and it sounds like somebody who's got authority. And what's crazy is how far down the list was Brian Callahan in terms of the authority in Cincinnati, right? Like, they've got an offensive coordinator and a defensive coordinator, so when it comes to who they're going to pick, I would guess Lou Anarumo's voice would be just as loud as his voice in the room, maybe even louder because Zach Taylor, the head coach, coaches the offensive side of the ball. Then there's Duke Tobin, who runs their player personnel, and then there's the old pawpaw, Mike Brown, and his daughter that kind of are on top of it. And so he's, fifth in command maybe? And yet, right there, total authority to explain, hey, we really feel good about what we did in free agency with our offensive linemen. This draft has a lot of good offensive linemen. It's kind of tough for us to figure that out where we're going to pick, but there are some really good developmental prospects here. There's really this, there's that. But did you walk away thinking, man, he really gave away some Bengals proprietary information? I didn't. That's what I'm talking about. So Brian Callahan, when he does these interviews, even when he doesn't have ownership over the situation, he presents himself as if he does have at least some authority, which is great. Because that's what head coaches and GMs have to do, is they have to kind of lay down I'm the one in charge, but I'm also not the guy who has all the answers, and I'll let my coaches coach, and I'll let everybody do their jobs, and we're supporting a whole group here. And it's a very fine line to walk, because nobody likes that coach who says, I'm the one who invented everything. Unless you win. Then people kind of like it. With Ran, it's like, so how do you develop a kicker? I have no idea. But we went to Craig Aukerman and our coaches. We got down. We said, okay, what players do we want around here? And our coaches said, these are the players we wanted around here, so we go out and find them. That's that collaboration that Ran comes from with the 49ers. So I understand why Amy wants Ran in charge, and I am glad that the Titans at least laid it out for us. But I think they've got it backwards. I think Brian Callahan should be the one who has final say. That's the 49er model. But can't get what we want in life all the time. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in here on our program. And there is one assumption that I want to make with a guy I don't know very well at all, really, in Ran Carthon, and a guy that I absolutely don't know at all in Brian Callahan. And I actually feel like this is a good thing. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5-1063 The Game. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Those are my guys. They've been taking great care of my home for years. In fact, I had something that needed to be done, and I had Hiller scheduled to come to the house, but because of the snow last week, the parts that I ordered myself were being delayed, and so Hiller was going to come to the house at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I didn't have the parts. I sent an email thinking that they'd get there on Sunday. I waited all day. I sent an email at like 9 o'clock at night. I said, guys, these parts aren't here. I'm sorry, whatever. They sent an email back first thing in the morning. Say, hey, that's fine. We'll put this on hold, and as soon as those parts come in, we're going to be right there. That's how easy it is to work with Hiller. That's why I love them. They take great care of my home, and they can do the exact same for you. 100% satisfaction. Happy you'll be, or the service is free. And Hiller offers true transparency pricing, which means that Hiller will line item every item of every part of every job up front, so a homeowner like me can easily understand what I'm paying for and why. For example, itemizing the parts and labor separately. They don't go out of their way to find things to fix. They fix what you need fixed. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, Electrical. I love them. Proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. Hiller. Call the Happy Face Truck today.
But Kyle Shanahan has control. Sean McVay has control. I don't know exactly the arrangement with Zach Taylor, but
well, there's no real GM there. It's a ownership front office, Katie Blackburn, and they do have
it's the VP of player personnel.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's
But
Mike.
they've got a very streamlined, the most streamlined / cheapest scouting front office in the league.
But I guess
their coaches are very involved in scouting.
But I guess it's like, to me, it's sort of like this is the 49ers model, right? This is the 49ers model. So if Rand Carthon, but is it basically the exact same model? It's just you flip-flop that thing?
I guess. I mean, I'm curious to find out. But, I mean, Carthon off 1 year, and a convenient firing for him seems to me to be falling into power rather than climbing the ladder, if you will, right?
Dingo, that was this morning. I couldn't agree more with Paul. I mean, quite frankly, I think that Rand Carthon got a promotion today, and the only reason he got a promotion was because everybody complained about who had final say on the roster and not knowing, and it became one of these things that took on a life of its own, that she just decided, okay, I'm going to have to make that announcement when we get this done. And again, as the Athletic story said, Amy Adams Strunk, she doesn't believe in the coach having power. But as she also said in her statement, this isn't her father's NFL. This is kind of the new, you want that model with all those teams they mentioned. You want to do things the 49er way, you give power to the coach. But I do want to make an assumption. And again, I don't know Rand Carthon very well, and I don't know Brian Callahan at all. But I'm going to make an assumption just off of what I've gathered from those two and kind of common sense here. I actually think those two are going to work together pretty well. And I think Brian Callahan is going to have a massive, massive say on this roster. Like, even though he won't have the final say, I truly think that there's a possibility that a true collaboration between those two will actually work here. That had they come to us with these two and said, well, no one guy has final say, or done what most these teams do, where they hide who has final say. Like, technically nobody knew that Pete Carroll had final say in Seattle over John Schneider, but I knew that because Floyd interviewed for that job, and that was part of the deal. And so they could have done that, and it wouldn't have been as much of a, well, did Mike want that guy or did Rand want that guy? And I think a lot of that is because of their personalities, where I think Brian Callahan, it's obvious just based on some of his past interviews that he's the kind of guy who wants what he wants, and that he has a way of going about finding what it is, even as the offensive coordinator and, fourth or fifth in the room when it comes to decision-making with the Bengals. And I think Rand has shown that he'll defer to the coaching staff if there's a strong conviction amongst the coaching staff. So while I don't like Rand having final say over Brian Callahan, and it worries me, especially like draft trades and things of that magnitude, make me very nervous when it comes to Rand, I actually think that they're going to collaborate just fine. And there's not going to be an issue of, oh, well, Rand wanted Johnny and Brian wanted Jimmy, and now they have these big issues. I don't think that's going to be the case. I could be wrong. Again, I'm making an assumption of people that I don't really know. But that's just the vibe I get. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. Caleb says, I don't care if my GM knows how to coach a kicker or not. I didn't say coach. I said develop. And if you don't care if your GM knows how to develop players, then why is he the general manager? And if you don't care if your GM knows how to develop players, whether it's a tackle, a guard, a DT, a quarterback, a kicker, if you don't care about that whether or not he knows how these coaches operate, then why is he the one who's in charge of the coaching staff? That doesn't seem to make a lot of sense, right? And when it comes to kicking, I think everybody just says, oh, yeah, just go make them. Go make them, Johnny. We don't need any coaching when it comes to kicking. We don't need to hold anybody accountable other than the kicker. Tyler Bass, go make it. But I don't know if you watched the games this weekend. I thought Did you notice, Ian, that every losing team missed a kick this weekend?
Did they? No, I don't think I noticed that.
Houston missed a kick right before the half, 10-10. Miami Fairbairn missed the kick.
Good kicker.
And I thought that was a big miss because it was 47 yards, and he missed the kick, and that would have put them up 13-10 at the half, and then Baltimore goes into the locker room, and who knows what the pressure is if they're down at halftime.
We know Buffalo missed a kick.
Buffalo missed a kick. McLaughlin missed a kick where he hit
was a
the
long
upright.
one. Yep.
And then Green Bay lost the game because they missed a kick.
He missed a kick too.
So you guys want to tell me you don't give a rat's ass about the GM knowing how the kicking works, and yet the entire country is laughing at the Packers when Tom Rinaldi's on the sideline and he says, yeah, I talked to Matt LaFleur about the kicker, and he said that he prays every time the kicker goes out there. I mean, then that's what you got into the mess with John Robinson and Vrabel. So, yes, you should care about that. And Rand should know how those things work. If he's going to be in charge of the coaching staff, he should be aware of how those things work. Whew. And it just drives me crazy. Whew. Texter says, player and kicker are different, Jared. Ha ha. Yeah, go tell that to the Bills. Go tell that to the Packers. Those kickers, they don't count. That field goal that they missed in Green Bay doesn't matter. Tie game, overtime with San Francisco. Nope, doesn't matter. That Buffalo kick they missed, that doesn't matter. All of those kicks mattered. Every single one of those field goals mattered in those games, including the Ravens game, because it was 10-10 when Miami Fairbairn missed. And I am a Miami Fairbairn fan for the most part, but I think he's been hurt. And he looked like Ryan Suckup there at the end trying to get the ball up to the uprights like, baby, please make it 40 yards. Please. Go. Oh, short. Texter says, it seems like Rand is the player picker and face of the front office, but won't have to do the day-to-day operations grind. The problem is that Rand isn't good enough with the media for any of the front-facing role stuff. Just say this. Tomorrow is Brian Callahan's introductory press conference, and I will argue that it is a bigger press conference for Rand Carthon tomorrow than it is for Brian Callahan. And I truly mean that. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. By the way, the text line is just filled with the boo-hoo, it was all Vrabel's fault crew, which is amazing that locally it was, it's all Vrabel's fault, don't blame Rand. And nationally, it's, why'd you fire the great Mike Vrabel? He never loses games. You guys, why would you do that? And I'm in the middle. I think Vrabel deserved to be fired. I think Vrabel's a coach. I think he's a good coach, but I don't think he's the greatest coach, and I think he's got a lot of problems. His arrogance and everything else. But I don't think Rand is completely blameless for last year either. But everybody believes what they want to believe. It's the offseason, which means narrative season rules all. Jason Fitz joins us next. His reaction to the hiring, the structure, and everything else. We'll do it with Fitz. Stillman and Company, I promised I'd give something away, so that's what we're going to do. Be caller 5 right now at 615-737-1025, and you will win a pair of tickets to see, before you can buy them, to see Billy Currington and my man Kip Moore at Ascend Amphitheater on Saturday, May 18th. Tickets on sale this Friday at 10 a.m. Good luck for that. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Look, I'm happy for Coach Callahan. He's a well-respected guy. You just wonder how that's an improvement over Mike Vrabel. That's my only question there. I mean, I just don't see how you improved yourself. But they decided to go in a different situation, different structure, and congratulations to him. And he's got a frontline quarterback and got some good talent to work with, and should be interesting.
There you go, Charlie Weiss on NFL radio, basically saying, well, I don't think he's an upgrade over Mike Vrabel, but good luck to him. I always joke with Caroline about what I call talking about radio, where it's people, instead of like having true opinions or explanations or whatever, they just talk about it like, well, it'll be interesting to see what Georgia does this week. They got Johnson out with that injury. It'll be interesting to see. Where like you don't really want to like stick down an opinion. And I love how he finished that with, well, it'll be interesting to see. Jason Fitz joins us now on the program, Yahoo Sports, Fox Sports Radio. So, Fitz, your reaction, because there's been a lot of boo-hooing from the national media about moving on from Mike Vrabel to this, on Brian Callahan. Your thoughts?
Okay, first and foremost, I'm going to walk you through a long, complicated answer, but I went down this exercise, and we may have talked about this before. But the year that Doug Peterson went to the Super Bowl as the Eagles coach, I looked back then at ESPN.com's hiring rankings for the year he was hired, right? And the year he was hired, he was ranked as the worst coaching hire. And that year, by the time he got to the Super Bowl, he was the only coach that was hired in his cycle that still had his job. So last week, I went down the same rabbit hole looking not just at the ESPN, but several major national publications over the course of the
Fitz,
last
can I guess where you're going with this? Brandon Staley and Urban Meyer in 2021?
Brandon Staley was highly rated. Matt Rule was highly rated. Guess who wasn't? Dan Campbell, Kevin Stefanski. Like, we have no idea, dude. Like, the real answer to this is we have no idea. And the national media is going to yell and scream about all of these coaches when none of us have any idea. It's very fair to say that Callahan is coming from a team where Zach Taylor had a lot to do with that offense, and he had great weapons to work around. He's not going to have great weapons where he is right now. So I think the best you can do right now is say it's an incomplete grade on who he's going to be, because who the hell knows? Is it an upgrade from Mike Vrabel? Who the hell knows? But what we do know is this, and what became abundantly clear is this. Amy Adams Strunk knew exactly what she wanted when it came to the leadership structure of this team, and she now has it. We have no idea if it's going to work, but I keep hearing from everybody that what you have to have is clear leadership structure, and the Titans have that. Whether it's the right leadership structure, great debate. But there is no doubt at this point who is in charge exactly of what. And that is something that Vrabel was never going to buy into. So if you buy that you need a complete structure, you were never going to get it with Vrabel. So who cares whether or not anybody thinks it's a better coach than Vrabel was?
Okay, to that point, what do people in the league think of Rand Carthon now being officially in charge of the Tennessee Titans?
It's early. To me, and look, I talked to 3 different people today that I think are smart and asked if maybe I've lost my mind. It seems early in this. Like, what's happened for this organization that makes you think that it was worth doing this with Rand Carthon? I don't know. But I'll go back to something Dominique Foxworth said to me Sunday, not about the Titans specifically, but about the NFL. And he pointed out that every single Sunday, the coach is on the sidelines. And while the coach is on the sideline coaching the game, the GM is sitting there up in all of these teams. The GM sitting there up in the owner's box, just nabbing on the owner's ear about what's good and bad about the team. And so GMs have a tremendous amount of influence on owners because they sit there during the game and emotionally react with them. So to me, what we learned here is that Carthon definitely has the ear of Amy Adams Strunk in a way that she trusts. And by the way, I mean, it should be noted, Jory Epstein pointed out today on our show together, that it's important in her statement. He has full roster control. So how many coaches were going to accept a situation where they had no roster control? Because there is none for anybody other than Rand Carthon. And by putting him in a situation where he doesn't have to handle the salary cap every day, you really put him in a position where you're saying, hey, I trust this guy to run the coaching staff. I trust this guy to run the talent. I trust him to run the team. Amy Adams Strunk has told the world she thinks Rand Carthon is the best football evaluator that she has in that building. And she told the world that she appreciated his skills in that more than Mike Vrabel when she made the decision she made.
Jason Fitz is with us. What's the word on the street about Brian Callahan?
Smart guy. Smart guy. I mean, that's the number one thing everybody says is smart guy. He got a lot of street cred in the way that they were able to continue being competitive with Browning as the quarterback. That's just real. You know, it is funny to me how sometimes we assign look at the great weapons. Look, I said this on Yahoo at the time, and this is no critique to Callahan, the human being, but he is not going to a situation where he's going to have Burrow throwing to Chase and T. Higgins. Let's be real for a second. So now look at the fatal flaws that the Bengals have had offensively over the course of the last few years. Most of that has been at the offensive line position. Interesting, because his dad is an offensive line coach in most people's minds. So you do have to ask yourself, wow, why were the Bengals incapable of evaluating the position? Well, they spent a bunch of money on it. They drafted on it. They tried, but for several years they missed at the offensive line position. It just was never a position of strength. I'm a little surprised, given his background with his dad, it hasn't been a little better there. So I think that's an area you got to look at, considering it was an area of weakness for the Titans. Now, is this person going to be the person that can identify how to turn that weakness into a strength? I don't know, but Rand has full control, so maybe he's got all of the magic beans. That's got to be your hope.
That is not my hope. Jason Fitz is with us on the program. Why can't Vrabel get a job? Well, hey, what happened, by the way, to if you fire Mike Vrabel, he'll have a job tomorrow?
I mean, why can't Belichick get a job? This is a weird hiring cycle. Do we really believe that Belichick and Pete Carroll don't deserve jobs somewhere?
Well,
Right
I mean,
now,
those guys are
everybody's
72
being
years
cautious.
old. Those guys are
Yeah.
72. Mike Vrabel is not 72 years old.
But look, I mean, we are in a world where realistically the Cowboys looked at Mike Vrabel or they looked at Bill Belichick and decided they'd rather keep McCarthy, right? The Eagles looked at Sirianni and decided that they don't want Bill Belichick. The Falcons have had 2 interviews with Bill Belichick, and they still are interviewing other people, right? Like, that's I can't tell you what most of these teams are looking for that they're not finding. There is obviously some, hey, we want to wait and see with some of the coordinators that are out there. But if we live in a world where Bill Belichick doesn't have a job yet, then we certainly live in a world where Vrabel doesn't have a job. Also, both of the guys we're talking about here, right or wrong, are guys that want some level of control on things and the way they're going down. And teams right now are less and less likely to give coaches that level of control. Right or wrong, teams seem to want this structure. Much like, it's funny because Mark Davis, the owner of the Raiders, literally said in an article in The Athletic a month ago that you need to have somebody experienced as your president of football operations in addition to a GM, in addition to a head coach. This is a prevalent theory among several owners in the NFL, what the Titans exactly have done. I'm not sure Vrabel wants to play those games. Also, I have no basis for this. I have no inside information. I just want to say this. There is no more pressure on any coach in all the world going into this year than there will be on Ryan Day at Ohio State. If Vrabel really covets that job, maybe he wants to sit around and wait and see if Ohio State, with all that money they're spending, doesn't get it done. Maybe he wants to go back there.
So you think that this would be a Vrabel choice? Because, I mean, he's interviewing with the Panthers, and I mean, look, I've seen some screwed up situations in my life. I mean, I went to college at Louisville when it was the Wild Wild West, and I don't think I've ever seen anything as screwed up as the Panthers. And I will not wish that on Mike Vrabel because he will fail miserably there, and I will feel terrible because I don't think anybody can win there, especially him. But if he's going to interview with the Panthers, it seems to me like he wants back in the NFL right now.
Or he wants a raise. I mean, multiple people I've talked to have made it clear that the Panthers are prepared to make whoever their next coach is the highest paid coach in the NFL. You want to make $16 million a year going rate, you're going to go to the Panthers. So, realistically, in a fully guaranteed contract situation, they are prepared to offer 6 years, $16 million a year. I mean, that's not, to me, look, it can be a dumpster. It can be awful. It can be terrible.
I'll get kicked in the face for that.
$15 million a year, I'll go lose a bunch of football games, get fired in a year and a half, and then by an owner that nobody respects. And by the way, still get out there and get all that money fully guaranteed. I don't think anybody's interviewing with the Panthers because they want that job. I think the one sneaky thing that would make sense for the Carolina Panthers, considering the fact that they just named a former player their GM that's been with the organization a long time, somebody that was with Seattle for years and has credited Pete Carroll as his mentor for years, I'd keep an eye out for Pete Carroll eventually looking at the Carolina Panthers job. Not because it's a good job, but because he can go somewhere, get a massive check, and work with somebody he respects a lot, and Morgan, the GM there.
Okay. So with that, what do you think the holdup between Belichick and the Falcons, and do you think that power issue can be resolved?
I think power is part of it, but I don't know. Like, nobody's getting Belichick to rethink what he's doing, are they?
I don't think you can teach an old dog new tricks. And so to say, like, hey, Rich McKay, an old football guy, and Bill Belichick, an old football guy who don't like each other very much, hey, you guys are now each 75 years old. I want you two to like each other. I can't imagine that would work that way.
Yeah, I know. I think you're right. 100% you're right. But why did he get to a second interview? Like what I can't figure out is, look, I've made this joke repeatedly, but just the Falcons interviewing Bill Belichick in the first place is like a student film director at USC asking Leonardo DiCaprio to come in and audition for a role. Like, what the Falcons weren't auditioning Belichick. Belichick was sitting there talking to them, right? Like, in my mind. But there is some curiosity to the way it's all going down but there isn't even a market right now. The people I'm talking to are telling me there isn't even a market for Belichick. So if there's no market for him, is he going to have to sacrifice things that are important to him in order to try and get this all-time wins record? It's really curious to me, man. Like, we were all convinced 3 weeks ago that, well, Belichick somewhere quickly is going to be a fix-all. And now, I think he's more likely to be on TV next year than he is on a sideline.
Well, I think what both Vrabel and Belichick would be better at, even though they don't do this in the NFL, is, you know how in hockey they'll fire the coach midseason and they'll hire a guy like right away to come in and coach them? It's like, on January 6th, they fire Johnny, and on January 8th, they hired Jimmy to a 4-year contract, and he was outside the organization, and now he's the hockey coach. That, I think, like, there would be serious appeal if people did that in the NFL for Vrabel and Belichick, because there are going to be some teams in October that are sitting there at 1-4 that are going to say, gosh, I wish I had Bill Belichick right now coaching this team because my head coach isn't getting the most out of them. But that being said, I don't want Belichick to coach my team, so I understand why all these other teams wouldn't want Belichick to coach them.
That might be, by the way, the best take I've ever heard from you. Like, you are 1,000% right that these guys coming in would be like, I'll fix you for the rest of the year and take a fully guaranteed contract. We all know I ain't going to play it out, but I'll take that guaranteed contract. Like, you are 100% right about that. But what do you do? Like, we know at this point, and I do mean know, that a hot candidate of some sort is going to be left out of this hiring cycle, whether it's a legendary name or whether it's one of the up-and-comers. Like, we know that. And that, to me, is one of the more staggering things that we've seen in this hiring cycle. It's that it's running so slow. And I said this earlier to somebody today, but I think we also have to look even at the Harbaugh conversation. Like, the longer we get into this, the more it becomes absolutely death for Michigan football if he takes the job in the NFL. Like, that becomes absolutely a mass consequence to a program that he supposedly loves. So I think the longer we get into Harbaugh, the more likely I, again, continue to think he's headed back to Michigan, which only speaks to how weird this hiring cycle is as a whole.
Jason Fitz, as always, Yahoo Sports, Fox Sports Radio. Great stuff, Fitz. Appreciate you, as always.
Appreciate you, brother. Have a great week.
Yep, Jason Fitz joining us on the program. So we got a lot of Titan stuff to get into, which we will with Jared versus Joe that's coming up at the top of the hour. But there is one thing that I have to clear off the deck. I have to get it off my chest. It's driving me freaking crazy. That's next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 through the game.
the 2-point conversion attempt that left them 8 down. Don't start me with the 2-point conversions and the analytics say go for it. Do the analytics say go for it no matter who's going for it? So if you and I were on the field, the analytics say go for it. It's the stupidest, laziest, lamest thing I've ever heard for reasoning in competition. And I hate when announcers just buy it without questioning it. The analytics say go for it.
That was Wilbon on PTI, and boy, everybody got mad at that. It was like, Paw Wilbon doesn't know analytics. Now, let me say this. Everybody tells me the analytics say go for it. Greg Olsen had this long tweet, which of course it was long from Greg Olsen. Guy never shuts up when he's calling the game, so it's absolutely, not surprising that he won't shut up on Twitter either. But I mean, he's got this long tweet about, again, how the guys on TV know the analytics and blah, 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 right? ESPN's even chief hip analytic guru Mina Kimes chimed in on TikTok explaining why the analytics work for Tampa Bay to go for 2 in that situation.
A few people asked me yesterday about the Bucks' decision to go for 2 down 8 against the Detroit Lions in the wildcard game. This one is pretty simple math. Essentially, if you're down 8, you're going to have to score another touchdown, which means you will have 2 opportunities to go for 2 or take the extra point. The odds of you converting at least one of them are better than not. And if you convert the first time, you can win in regulations. We saw the Packers and the Titans both do this year.
Okay, so the math says it makes more sense to go for it. Fine. If you tell me the analytics say go for it, that's one thing. But as was reported in the Joe Rexroad Dialectic, the Titans analytics department did not like that the Titans went for 2 on the road at Miami. Yes, it worked, but their analytics said don't do that. And I totally get it, right? It's like playing blackjack, for instance. You can have an 18 and you can hit it and get a 3, but you're not supposed to. And if you do hit it and get a 3, I'll still think you're a moron. So I understand. But what I don't understand is how does everybody else's analytics say go for it and the Titans analytics say don't go for it? That's what I don't understand. Shouldn't the analytics be all the same? If it's all a predictive model based on what's happened in the past, shouldn't everybody have the same data? And thus, like in blackjack, if you're sitting in the first seat, you're supposed to hit in that situation, or you're supposed to double down or split or stand. Then that would be the same case if you're in the third spot, right? Like it's the same. But with analytics, everybody tells me anytime a team does anything controversial, it's like, the analytics say you need to do this. I'm not here to crap on analytics. I don't believe in it as much as everybody else does, but I'm not here to poo-poo analytics. What I'm here to poo-poo is how can their analytics say this and their analytics say that? You analytic gurus, explain to me. Chris Collinsworth's on TV. Well, the analytics right here say you got to go for it. Not the Titans analytics. The Titans have different analytics, apparently. Somebody explain this to me. Ian, you like analytics.
Kinda, yeah.
Explain this to me. How can the Titan analytics say don't go for it, but everybody else's analytics say go for it?
Maybe it wasn't the exact same formula. I don't know.
This doesn't make any sense. Somebody says it's based on specific teams and their players, not generalized on non-existent teams. But how can you have the analytics to tell you one thing or another? Because
you gotta plug in the formula for the numbers, like this guy's speed, this guy's awareness, and then
they do that all at one time.
Before the game.
Okay, Derrick Henry just broke his leg. Now what do I do?
Scrap it.
Oh, I got the same analytics? There's no way the analytics can be the same. That's all bullcrap. That's what drives me crazy. If you want to make a decision, that's fine. And I get it. You want to go for 2 because you think, all right, we're on the road in a playoff game. It's an intense atmosphere. Let's put the pressure on Jared Goff. Let's make it a 6-point game, get the ball back, score and win, and get on the bus and go to the NFC title game. Fine. That's what I thought Vrabel did when he did it. But when you tell me that, no, I'm smarter than you because of the analytics.
It's a guideline. It shouldn't be the gospel.
But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the analytics being right or wrong. I'm talking about the Titans' analytics being different than everybody else's analytics. So what happens is, how the hell would, if everybody has different analytics, so the Titans' analytics say don't do it, and the Buccaneers' analytics says do it, then how the hell does Chris Collinsworth know what the analytics say?
What do PFF's analytics say? That's what he says.
Okay, then how does Greg Olson know what the analytics say?
I'm not sure.
Somebody explain this to me.
Perhaps we need a mathematician
I mean,
with the formulas.
Again, somebody goes, you have to have different teams. Do a basic amount of research on the subject. The game players get hurt. So if we have an analytic model going into the NFC divisional round game and my star player gets carted off or I'm missing my right tackle.
Might not be very accurate.
Right. Like Frank Ragnow got hurt the other day. That's a huge loss for the Lions. So is the coach then on the headset supposed to hear from the analytics team? Shh. Well, we're supposed to do this, but Frank's out, so go ahead and downgrade it by 6. Shh. What are we doing here? I don't understand. What are we doing? One texter says, what are the analytics that say run a fake punt on your own 30? I actually don't have as much of a problem with that as everybody else does. Shockingly. I mean, it blew up in their face, Buffalo. But I do remember that the old man used to say that the time to run a fake is when
Well, they said on the broadcast there was some type of numbers missing.
Yeah, but Romo screwed that up. Like they
weren't
said after the game that it was called from the sideline.
Gotcha. Okay. They said there was like, there's only 10 defenders on the field, so they probably saw that. But
I bet old Tony, he probably doesn't know anything about the analytics. One texter says they use general analytics based on the entire league averages and success rates on TV, whereas the Titans use specific analytics which only apply to their specific team based on their specific history and success with their personnel. Well, that makes sense, but then again, I don't want to hear Greg Olson tell me about analytics on TV when he doesn't know what the Titan analytics say. My guess is the TV guys just say, analytics. I think that's what they do. That's what I think they do. Jared versus Joe. Maybe this was like a warm-up to get me worked up here. Jared versus Joe. The Titans have hired a coach. The Titans have named their power structure. And I'm sure we will debate that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios. It is 5 o'clock on a Friday. The Titans have a new coach. They have a direction, at least in the front office, that we are now aware of, which does include a promotion for Chad Brinker that technically puts him above Rand Carthon. That is some freaking tea. Caroline is here. Hello, Caroline.
Hello, how we doing?
Outstanding. I just went on a rant to maybe warm up for this on analytics after everybody told me that the Buccaneers analytics were right to go for 2 at the end of the game, but the Titan analytics in Joe's wonderful piece said not to do that, but I digress. Joe is with us. It is time now for Jared versus Joe.
Jared Stillman versus Joe Rexrode. Now on Stillman and Company.
On ESPN
102.5 The Game.
Caroline.
All right, Jared, you go first this week. Question number 1. Who should have final say on the Titans roster?
It should be Brian Callahan, because that is there's a couple of reasons here. There's 3 reasons here. Number 1, that is the 49er model. And I am going to put these reasons in what's most logical first. That's the 49er model. Do you want to be the 49ers? That is the 49er model, which is the guru coach is in charge and has final say. Rand Carthon comes from where? The 49ers. So if I put Brian Callahan in charge of the final say of the 53-man roster, then I'm telling Rand Carthon, hey, you're John Lynch. And he can do that because he watched John Lynch. That's where he comes from, is the San Francisco way. When he was in L.A. with the Rams, Jeff Fisher had final say. So the head coach has always had final say wherever Rand Carthon has been, except for Atlanta for a couple of years as a scout under Thomas Dimitrov. So that's the first thing. It's the San Francisco way. Joe says it's the Rams way. It's kind of the new guru way. The second reason is because, well, I thought Rand Carthon stunk it up last year. And I know everybody blames Mike Vrabel for all the decisions they made, and that last year doesn't count like it's Kenny Payne's basketball season. But last year does count for something for me. And so I got Brian Callahan, who's got a completely clean slate. And I got Rand, who did, without technically having final say last year, did kind of have final say last year, although Vrabel had like a veto power or something. And I'm worried about, some of those mistakes Rand made last year and some things that may have gone checked by Vrabel that may go unchecked in the future. That does worry me a little bit. And I had a third reason, but I forgot what it was. And so, because the Bengals do so much scouting. And the Bengals use their coaches to do so much of that scouting because they don't pay actual scouts. And so Brian Callahan has a lot of experience doing that. And Rand is kind of, always kind of more agreeable, has always talked about deferring to the coaches. And so to me, it's a no-brainer. Brian Callahan should be the final decision maker of the Titans.
You really do have such a bundle in your britches about Kenny Payne, don't you?
I mean, he said last week that his first season didn't count, and I couldn't do that.
All right, well, I'll argue it. I don't look. It's a hard question, okay, but I'm going to say that it should be Rand Carthon because first of all, you're putting a lot on a first-time head coach to immediately give final say. Remember, Kyle Shanahan was like the golden boy chosen one for years before he got that San Fran job. Other guys from that model, O'Connell, actually Zach Taylor, like Brad Holmes comes from there. He has final say in Detroit. Like, it's not like everybody who emanates from the McVay-Shanahan thing has the same exact setup. Look, if you believed in Rand Carthon to the extent that you hired him as San Francisco's number 3 last year, and then you fired Mike Vrabel, and to me, then it would be such a weird half measure and conflicting message if you didn't give him final say today, right? So that's why I have to say it should be him. It's just the logic of the natural order of things, the way things have gone. And I think you are putting a lot on a first-time head coach to immediately say, not only are you head coach, all the players are you too, buddy. Go. And Rand, I guess we're glad we hired you last year, but help out a little bit. Thanks, buddy. I think it would have been a really weird statement to come out the other way today. And credit to Amy Adams Strunk for following through and telling us what the situation is when she said she would. I don't see how you make the moves preceding this that you did and then come out and say, and this new coach also has final say. I think that would be bizarre. Now, look, is Rand Carthon going to work out? I'm certainly not as down on him as Jared is. I have skepticism. I also have an open mind. And here we go. We're about to find out.
No, I have an open mind, too. Just because that's not what I want doesn't mean that I don't think it can work out. Chase asked me today. He said, what if Rand works out? I said, I'll say I'm wrong. That I was wrong, and I'll be happy about it because I'm a Titan fan, so they'll be good at football, and I'll be happy. But I just don't think that that's very likely. And what drives me crazy about all this, too, on the final say front is it's like, well, we did hire Rand to be GM last year, so we should give him final say. Well, if you hired him to be GM last year, then you should have given him final say last year. What the Titans did today, and I'll give them credit for this, is they admitted that what they did last year was wrong. Basically,
True.
Today was what we did last year was wrong. The problem is that the Titans, for each of the last 3 years, have started off by telling us what we did last year was wrong. Or, our vision going forward is this. Our vision going forward is John Robinson and Mike Vrabel together on dueling contract extensions, and they're going to lead us into the new decade. Yay! 1 year later. All right, our model is Mike Vrabel's the best, and the Rand Carthon collaboration. Nobody has final say. Everybody checks each other. Go. A year later, our model is Rand Carthon has final say. Brian Callahan's the man. It's like, at what point do we realize, maybe we need to stop doing this every year? And Rand certainly did not earn, I think, the benefit of the doubt last season.
That was well said. And yes, it's a bunch of declarations, and hope like heck one of them works out. Here we go. Let's try again.
Next year. Here's our new vision.
Is you being willing to admit that you were wrong about Rand Carthon if things work out? Is that you being open-minded, or is that just you saying you're willing to admit when you're wrong?
Well, aren't those kind of the same things?
I don't think so. I don't think you have a very open mind about Rand Carthon.
Well, so if Rand Carthon does well, my mind is open to then say that I'm wrong.
I don't think that's what being open-minded means.
I mean, how's that different than Joe's open-mindedness?
If you're open-minded, you could say, yeah, I think that this could work.
I mean, I'm open-minded because I actually like Brian Callahan, so I'm open-minded to that.
That is not what we are talking about.
Also,
we're not talking about Brian Callahan.
Also, to the point Joe made about, you brought in Rand Carthon last year to be GM, and so if you were to, take away, or give the power to the other guy, what's that say? What's it say that a guy that Rand Carthon hired to work under him is now above him?
Yeah, well, in title, but at least equal in terms of, reporting to Amy Adams Strunk. It's interesting. That whole thing is very interesting for sure. I mean, obviously it's taking a lot of the other stuff away from him and giving it to Brinker, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know exactly what it says, to be honest with you. I've had some interesting conversations today with people who think of a wide range of things on that.
So I talked to somebody about this today. Actually, I talked to somebody about yesterday about not like this specific situation with the Titans, but the whole vice president versus president. I know the thing's going to be that Rand and Chad are equal, kind of, but they're really not. One is president, the other is executive vice president, and in no stratosphere is vice president on the same level as president, right?
By title, I agree. I mean, I'm not great on corporate structure. I know that if you have different departments, you could, in theory, be right. The titles could, because they're in different departments, technically, it could be different. Maybe.
Yeah,
I don't know.
like is EVP? Is there a world where EVP is over president of football ops?
I mean,
are there different
this is the president. He reports to the vice president.
The executive vice president.
It's a good question for tomorrow. I mean, it's a good question. When Amy Adams Strunk inevitably takes our question, I'm sure she'll take a bunch of them. But I mean, why not just have Brinker's title be EVP of that, and him and Rand be EVP of his. I don't know.
I'm just saying. Caroline, what's next?
Joe, you go first. How much blame does Mike Vrabel deserve for the personnel mistakes last year?
Well, I think this is the time when we now blame Vrabel for everything, right? I mean, last year was our time to blame Robinson for everything, and we had to get him out of here, and Braves all the way. And now Braves out, so let's blame him on it. It's the easy thing to do, man. I mean, I'm so old. I've seen this so many times. It's nauseating. It's like the guy who just got fired or left or whatever is absolutely bury that guy. And the new person coming in, absolute genius. Couldn't do anything wrong, or the people left over, whatever. Look, in all seriousness, Caroline, I don't know. I think it's clear that Rand Carthon was not just completely running things. There was a deference to Vrabel for sure. Now, also, as we've talked about so many times, a lot of these free agent signings were directly linked to Rand Carthon. So, I mean, clearly they were his idea, right? And his relationship with them helped lead to the signing. So it's not like we can sit here and say, yeah, you can't give any blame to Rand. I don't buy that at all. But look, I'll go back to Robinson's tenure. And we've also talked about this. Vrabel deserves some blame for some of those mistakes. He had input on a lot of those mistakes and what was in favor of some of those mistakes that John Robinson made. They're on John Robinson's record, but Mike Vrabel gave input that helped lead to the mistake. We all know he didn't on A.J. Brown, but he did on others, including Isaiah Wilson. So he deserves some blame, certainly. He deserves blame for some of the the losing in general. If you're the head coach, you have to. That's on your record. So the staff mistakes, he made some. There's plenty of things he deserves blame for. He's going to be way over blamed here in the short term in the wake of his departure, without question. It always happens.
Joe's so right. Like the narrative of, oh no, that's his fault. That's his fault. That's his fault. I mean, it is ridiculous. The two things that are both ridiculous to me, one is, the boo-hooing of Mike Florio and Keyshawn Johnson and Charlie Weiss and all these people boo-hooing about the Titans, firing Mike Vrabel to hire Brian Callahan. That's ridiculous. And then this whole thing that, oh no, you're going to see Rand unleashed is a little over the top. If Rand was so unleashed, he would have been able to hit some good players last year, and they really didn't do any of that. And if the Titans have a bad season this year, then everybody will blame Rand. And Joe's right. The second Rand's out of here, it'll be, well, Brian Callahan wasn't getting the right players. So this new GM they're going to he's going to get Brian Callahan the right players. It's a lazy way to think, in my opinion. It is just, I want to believe the narrative that makes me feel good about my team, and I think that's lazy. So I am in dead agreement with Joe right there as far as all the Vrabel blame. And I do think Vrabel deserves some blame on the Robinson stuff. And I also think that, Vrabel probably didn't. When I read in your story, Joe, that Vrabel wanted Rand to be assistant general manager, I'm like, well, he never was going to respect that guy no matter what. And so it probably did make collaborating pretty difficult. But, I mean, the way Titan fans are treating it now, like, oh, yeah, it was all Vrabel's fault is just ridiculous, especially after how many people freaking washed the rims of his car over the years. More Jared versus Joe continuing next. Caroline, go.
Okay, Jared, you go first. Let's say we have a brand new franchise, a brand new football team that starts today. You get to pick your head coach, either Brian Callahan or Mike Vrabel. Who are you choosing?
I am picking Brian Callahan. And I will tell you why I'm picking Brian Callahan. Because, we played
Awfully
this Charlie.
convenient.
Yeah, we played the Charlie Weiss cut where he's like, I don't see how you're improving at all. One word, scheme. The Ray Perkins offense was great in the 1980s and in the 1990s when they ran that with the Giants and the Jets, and Bill Parcells was great with it, and Tom Brady won 6 Super Bowls doing it. So I'm not saying it doesn't work, but the scheme today where the game is headed is the offensive guru coach. And the offensive guru coach who is directly right there in there like swimwear with his quarterback, and that right now is Brian Callahan. That's why I think it's an upgrade. Vrabel has shown us that he is hit or miss when it comes to picking the offensive coordinator, that it is like throwing a dart at the board. And then, not only that, Vrabel also does not do a good job at hiring a staff. And so I think Vrabel's a good coach. I think Vrabel should get a job. But if I had to pick between the two, I'm going with the offensive guru, especially because if I'm an expansion team and I'm picking first and I'm going to take Caleb Williams or Drake May or whatever, I want the guru coach who's got the experience of being at the very, very bottom and starting over, which is basically what the Bengals did after their disastrous 2019 season, of which he was a part of. But they pretty much started over in 2020. I'd rather have Brian Callahan there than Mike Vrabel.
All right, give me this exact scenario, Caroline. Give me I want to hear the exact wording on the question again.
You have a new football team. You get to pick your head coach. Are you picking Brian Callahan or Mike Vrabel?
So you have an expansion team.
Sure.
Is that right? I mean, okay? Because seriously, that matters. I think in this situation. Okay.
Joe, you get to pick a coach. You picking Vrabel?
How else would
Callahan?
you get a new team in the NFL?
Yeah, sure. I'm just making sure. Well, look, but the thing is, I think the situation matters when it comes to the type of coach you want. I would go with Vrabel. And the reason I would go with Vrabel is because if I'm trying to, as much as I hate the word, set a culture, then I think Vrabel's one of the best guys in the league at doing it. I understand that, there's a guy here or there who will go off and,
Go talk to Wesley Woodyard for the 18th time he's got an axe to grind.
Yeah, and I like Wesley, but he's going to do that. But and others like Garrett Tart doesn't like Vrabel. That's fine. But I think setting a culture, setting a foundation, setting expectations in an organization, I think Vrabel's a perfect guy for that. So I would go with him. Now, look, I don't dismiss what Jared said about the offensive guru coach, but the bottom line is right now we know, and some people think they know Vrabel's a bad coach. I think I know he's a good coach who obviously struggled the last couple of years, has made some mistakes, as we just said last segment, but I know he's a good coach. I don't know Brian Callahan as a head coach at all. I don't know it. And continue to be the trend, and certainly if it continues to succeed at a high rate, especially guys with their lineage, but there are going to be failures. And like Nathaniel Hackett was an offshoot of the McVay-Shanahan tree, who obviously flamed out early. A lot of things at play in that situation. I'm just saying, right now, I like the hire for the Titans. I like everything I hear about and from Brian Callahan. I still don't know him as a head coach at all, so I got to go with the known commodity.
So here's my thing with Vrabel on the known commodity front. You're right, because we don't know anything with Brian Callahan. I'm making a strong assumption by saying this guy has been in so many places that he probably knows a lot of different potential assistant coaches, and he probably knows also guys that will lead him to the right assistant coaches and keep him away from the wrong assistant coaches. Vrabel was in the league with one organization for about 4 years, and then he got a head coaching job, and I think it showed that Vrabel didn't have the contacts or the knowledge to be able to build out a staff correctly. With Vrabel and the coaching staff, I felt like it really was like a luck of the draw. with him. That it could have been Arthur Smith, but it could have been Todd Downing. Or it could have been Jason Houdeling. Or it could have. And so the fact that I just don't think Vrabel has either the knowledge base to hire a good staff or the humility to accept that he might need some help filling out his coaching staff, because he certainly is no guru when it comes to finding assistant coaches. I think that is, really swings the pendulum for me against him as a known commodity, because the coaching staff might be one of the most important things that a coach does.
Well, yeah, but Vrabel's first DC hire was a Patriots guy, right? I mean, it's not like he was confined to only Texans guys. He did bring a lot of Texans guys, and of course that's through O'Brien and through
Ohio
England
State
and all that
guys.
stuff. But yeah, Ohio State guys. I mean, it's sure Callahan has good contacts. He's been several places. I'm sure it'll benefit him. But again, we have to see that too. His choices and staff. I mean, it's still a lot of unknown with him. And if you're going to make the safe choice here, well, not just safe. I mean, I think it's the smarter choice. You go with the known commodity. By the way, I got people mad at you on my personal text line about the EVP president thing.
Oh, I got people mad at me too.
Like you got to be out of your mind if you think because the title is president that he's ahead of Rand. So, but look, I will say, clarify that, Titans. Just clarify that, because it is an obvious thing someone will go to when they read the two titles.
Well, I was told that Brinker is ahead of Rand, but that it's not about a power dynamic. It's to support Rand, is what I was told.
But that's still not Rand's boss.
Well, I mean, I don't think he can fire Rand, but I also think that, it's like I was talking to somebody today that was like, well, in the end, ultimately it goes to Amy. No, duh, it goes to Amy. She's the owner. But, all these people are hired and fired by the owner. Rand can't decide on a day that, I'm just going to fire Brian Callahan. That has to come from Amy. At least she has to be on board with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, Caroline, what's next?
All right, Joe,
We
you
still
go
got
first.
mad at each other, Caroline. Okay.
Oh, well, just you wait.
Pressure's on you, Caroline. Pressure's on.
Just let me dig into my bag of tricks here and see if I can maybe raise the volume level. The Buffalo Bills are $40 million over the cap. Is Buffalo going to have to tear the team down because of the cap? Joe, you go first.
I'm not even doing this. I'm not doing it. Guys, it's a soft
You said
cap.
we wanted yelling.
No. Yeah, but I'm not doing it. In fact, Jared tried to start this with a text between us. I destroyed him again.
You started it on Monday. You started it on Monday. I said you won on Tuesday.
Right.
You started on Monday. You did.
You're right.
Yes.
I did start one. I did start one with you. You're right. But then you restarted it. Yeah. The Bills, like any team in this situation, you're going to keep their top players. Of course they are. Are they going to lose some mid-level players they'd rather have on their roster because they can't pay them because they have to be compliant with the salary cap because the salary cap is freaking real? Yes. And that's it. And Jared, the onus is on you, and it's on you, Caroline, if you're going to buy into this at all, to demonstrate again, as I've said before, that every single personnel move by every single team, every single offseason is completely independent of the cap, which is one of the dumbest things a human being could possibly say. The end. Jared, say whatever you want. I'm not going to yell at you. Go ahead.
I have a prediction for the Buffalo Bills offseason this year, guys. The Buffalo Bills, who are $40 million over the cap and have a quarterback who makes legitimate quarterback money and a wide receiver who is a total freaking crybaby and takes all of his money in the form of a signing bonus, are not going to have to resort to signing Aaron Brewer and Andre Dillard this offseason in order to survive. Because the excuse I got with why Jack Gibbons' slow tush was out there at middle linebacker was the John Robinson screwed up the cap, or why Aaron Brewer was being paid $4.3 million, or why the 49ers' backup right guard was your starting right guard, or why Andre Dillard, and it's not Vrabel's fault, it's not Rand's fault, because John Robinson screwed up the cap. And I'm just going to tell you, I bet you the Buffalo Bills don't have Aaron Brewer starting at center because, well, this is all we could afford. I can promise you that.
Yeah.
I bet Jack Gibbons, I bet they don't have an undrafted free agent who can't run starting at middle linebacker next year. I bet you the Buffalo
It's
Bills
funny you
will
say
be
that because
right
that's
back
exactly
in
what they
the
just
playoffs.
had this last weekend. It's funny you say that because that's like they totally just had like a plumber playing middle linebacker.
But that's because they had to
last
cart
week.
off the other guy the week before.
I understand. They will have some personnel situations that they don't like to be compliant with the cap. They will keep their top players, just like any team in that situation would. It's still going to hurt your depth. It's going to hurt your roster. So it's fine. Again, the onus is on you. Every single move, independent of the cap. The smart conversation, which you have a lot, I agree that people that come out and say, "Oh my God, the Bills or the Chargers. Oh, what is going to happen? The quarterback." It's like, well, they can do a lot of stuff. They can do a lot of stuff. There's a lot of flexibility, as we know. There's a lot of kicking the can. It's a soft cap, but it's fake. It's not a factor. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if a team has cap space. Completely idiotic take by you.
It doesn't matter.
Completely idiotic
because
take.
every time that they say you just keep kicking the can down the road never ends.
Right. Sure, Jared. You have to make decisions you don't want to make with your roster to be compliant with the cap, and that includes mid-level players mostly for these teams that you would rather have than not, but you won't have them, and you will have scrubs off the street in some cases to be compliant. It is true of every single team. Someday, when John Robinson is comfortable talking, whenever that may be, I think we need to have a show. We'll sit down and we'll go through each offseason and we'll have him redline each guy who was specifically a cap decision. There were multiple guys every single one of his off seasons.
I just remember last year at the Super Bowl.
Whoever you want to talk to.
I just remember last year at the Super Bowl, Thomas Dimitrov coming on this show. And Thomas Dimitrov saying that he never once talked to Arthur Blank about the cap. It was always about the cash.
Yeah, great. That's the owner. It's up to him to figure the cap out. Dude, I heard that interview when you tried to lead him into your narrative and he wouldn't go there, and then you tried to claim a win. You've died on the hill. The vultures have picked at you. The maggots now have their own maggots. Stop dying on the hill.
Caroline, who wins?
All right, so in terms of new coach, who you bringing in, like we know that Brian Callahan can coach an offense. Like we know that. We know that Mike Vrabel cannot. We know that Mike Vrabel can build culture. We don't know that about Brian Callahan. So it really comes down to whatever you prioritize with a new young team. Is it culture or is it scheme? Personally, I would say Brian Callahan, but I do think that there's a fair argument for either. Overall, final say, Jared, I don't understand your immense lack of trust in Rand Carthon.
Did you see the left tackle last year?
I did, and that was terrible. I did. It was awful. It was horrendous. And
if
nobody
we
is
could
going to say that it was a good move.
If we could redraft the 2023 draft, would you draft the guard with the 11th overall pick?
No, I wouldn't. It's actually funny. I listened to Brian Callahan on a podcast, and he said, I think the best tackle in this draft is actually a guard, that kid from Northwestern.
He was like, these guys aren't really top 10 guys. The best one is a guard, is the kid out of Northwestern who's probably more of a guard. And so, between that and the left tackle and the terribleness of the whole everything, I have no faith in Rand Carthon. Zero. But I have an open mind.
No, you don't. Saying you have no faith and that you have an open mind, those are two very different things. So for that reason, Joe wins.
She just wanted to give it a Joe because I won the last two, but
that is not the truth.
He just argued for the cap, Caroline. You know the cap's fake.
The cap, it does not cap spending.
Oh, he's full of crap.
We all know. We can all acknowledge that. It does not cap spending.
What's
if you
amazing
want to
to me?
spend $1 billion on your roster, you can do that if you want to.
Yeah.
What's amazing to me is that when we started this,
Caroline, do not go to that side. It is such a dumb argument.
Can you not? Are you denying that if you want to spend $1 billion on your roster, you can?
Why hasn't anyone done it then?
Because they would lose money.
$1 billion.
Oh, okay. So again, I have time, guys. It does cap spending. It does.
No, it doesn't.
It isn't real. It does.
You know what cap spending? What cap spending is the owner looking at their checking account saying, I think I'd rather have that extra $150 million in my bank account. That's what cap spending.
Yeah, that's a factor too. Along with the salary cap, which exists,
Joe,
Thanks for the dub.
congratulations on your pity win this week because, I mean, who knows?
You cannot just call it a pity win when you lose.
Well, I'm not. I normally don't do that, but in this case, I mean, I think it's because I won last week is why.
All right, sourpuss.
Okay. Stillman and Company continues. 615-737-1025 on our program. I do have an open mind, but tomorrow is a big day for the Tennessee Titans. And one person in particular, we'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game. Let me tell everybody that tomorrow is your chance to participate in Preds Pick to Click. If you correctly guess a Preds player that scores a goal in the Preds game tomorrow night, you win a pair of tickets to an upcoming Preds home game. Robbie and Joe tomorrow at 8:45. Pick to Click brought to you by TJ Anderson Homes of Benchmark Realty. That's my guy. List your home with TJ to get your home seen, heard, and sold.
Mike Vrabel doesn't have a job today. What is the disconnect there?
Well, I think Amy spoke to her decision of making, of the decision she made and why. And that was about, her long-term vision, of the organization. And that's really, I think, what it was.
A moment ago, you said the reason primarily he was fired was because of the vision that Miss Amy sees for this team. What was it about Mike that wasn't compatible with that vision?
It's her vision for the organization, not the team. The vision for her organization and how she wants things structured for that. Like I said, Miss Amy's she's made her statement and she's clarified her reasons, and we're here to support her.
She talked about it, you talked about it, but no one's actually defined what it is.
I think at the right moment we'll define that vision, and that's going to come when we hire our next head coach, and we'll be able to give you guys more of a detailed description at that time.
Does Mike not fit the vision today?
Well, again, this was about Ms. Amy's long-term vision, and she stated in her statement how she felt.
Can't share that vision?
No, it's not the time. It's not the time to share that vision today. Because I think as we go through this process, we need to make sure that we have the right person aligned with that, and why we hired that person will fit that vision.
There you go. That was Rand Carthon. We have breaking news, by the way. According to Adam Schefter, just right now, Jim Harbaugh is leaving Michigan to take the Chargers job. Wow. Who could have seen that coming, Ian?
Shocker.
I mean, just a freaking shocker that Jim Harbaugh is going to be the next coach of the Chargers. Now, I do want to get to the Rand thing in a second, but let me just say this. It looks like Belichick's going to get the Falcons job if he and Rich McKay can play nice. Who knows? But it kind of all these kind of line up. Ben Johnson to the Commanders, whatever. If you mean to tell me that Pete Carroll, who was trying to get the Chargers job, but I don't think they were interested. Mike Vrabel, who interviewed for the Chargers job, but I don't think they were interested. If we're going to go a year without Pete Carroll, Mike Vrabel, and Bill Belichick, if those guys don't get jobs, let me just say this. Boo! Like, I don't want Vrabel or Belichick to coach my team, but I want them to coach. Like, I want a football season where Bill Belichick's coaching. And I want a football season where Vrabel's coaching. So if they start off 4-1 and the Titans are 1-4, everybody can sit there and pretend it's the A.J. Brown trade all over again. Like, that's what I want. And if it's the opposite, we can sit there and say, ha, 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 ha. All these national media people told us Vrabel was the greatest coach who ever lived. And I don't know if we're going to get it. But again, the breaking news is Jim Harbaugh to the Chargers. So I have a take that a lot of people are going to be mad about, but as is with most of my opinions, I'm not sure I really care about this. But tomorrow's press conference, 1:00. Somebody texted in asking if I would be there. I probably will not be because it's at 1:00, and we're on the air at 2. But I think it's bigger for Rand Carthon than it is for Brian Callahan. And I know it's Brian Callahan's introductory press conference and that, it's his special day, like it's his birthday or senior night or something like that. But today the owner put Rand Carthon in charge of the football team. And so now it's time to act like it. No more bullcrap. No more, buzzwords, not trying to step on toes, no dodging the media for an entire football season when star players get traded away. No more ball didn't bounce our way. No more you have to ask so-and-so. No, the buck stops with you. And if he gets up there tomorrow and he has a disastrous press conference like he had 2 weeks ago, and it's as bad as that last one was, I mean, go ahead and call me in 3 years, because that'll be how long it takes for the Titans to dig themselves out of whatever hole they're about to get into. And while press conferences aren't the end-all, be-all of everything, it's a pretty good indication if you can lead, if you can at least do a press conference and do it correctly. So tomorrow's press conference, you're going to be listening to Brian Callahan, and they're going to ask him, what do you think about Derrick Henry? And they're going to ask him who's going to be his offensive coordinator. And is he going to bring his dad here? And what's going to come from the Bengals and all that. That's great. He's going to win that press conference like Jeremy Pruitt won his press conference. Like Kenny Payne, the worst basketball coach in the history of basketball, won his. Tomorrow, it's about Rand. And if Rand can operate the press conference, can really take accountability and ownership for the organization, hopefully it'll be better than it was 2 weeks ago. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Stillman and Company. We will get to your phones and everything else on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Hey, we are officially inviting you to our first ever Super Saturday. Join us and come hungry Saturday, February 10th at New Heights Brewing for all the soup you can handle from some of the finest restaurants in Middle Tennessee. Bring the family and enjoy delicious soup. Mwah. Live music, games for the kids, and more. It's our first ever Super Saturday, benefiting the Nashville Predators Foundation. More details, including how to purchase tickets, coming.
Stephen A., are you surprised that Bill Belichick, who many have called the greatest coach of all time, there isn't more interest in him, just the Atlanta Falcons, who aren't contenders by any means?
Sadly, no, I am not surprised. For the record, I think it's important that everybody here knows. I believe that the Dallas Cowboys, I'm not advocating Swagoo that Mike McCarthy should have been fired. I think there's a difference between you being fired and a team saying, look, we appreciate you, but that's a 6-time champion over here. We can't pass up this opportunity. You see the difference? I'm saying that you don't boot Mike McCarthy out the door because he lost a playoff game to the Green Bay Packers when he had back-to-back 12-win seasons. But you do boot him out the door to get a 6-time champion when you're an 81-year owner and you're supposedly starving for a championship. I still can sit here and tell you that I'm not surprised, and here's why. It's something that I've said for weeks, months actually, and I'll say it again. Bill Belichick is responsible in a lot of people's eyes for Tom Brady walking out the door in New England.
That was Stephen A. today. And let me just say this. As long, it looked from the very beginning like the Chargers were going to go with Jim Harbaugh. And it looked from the very beginning like the Falcons were going to go with Bill Belichick. But as this drags on, like the Chargers, it was obvious they were interviewing people, but they really weren't like interviewing people. But with the Falcons, it feels like they were interviewing people, but they really weren't interviewing people. Now it feels like they're interviewing people. Like now it feels like Belichick may not go there. And there may not be a place for Belichick. And I hate that. And like Mike Vrabel is interviewing tomorrow with the Panthers? Boo! Like I want Vrabel to coach a real team. I don't want him to coach the Panthers. He'll coach the Panthers next year. They'll win 4 games. And it'll be like, well, I can't blame Vrabel because the Panthers ownership is terrible, which is true. I mean, oh, goodness gracious. I want Belichick coaching. I want Vrabel coaching. That's what I want for this upcoming season. And I feel like I'm not going to get it. Now, Cameron texts in and goes, as a Tennessee fan, I have seen this for years. The coach can do no wrong according to the media, contrary to all evidence. Then the second that same coach gets fired, everything he did and said was stupid, and he was the sole cause of every bad thing that ever happened. Boy, is that not the truth when it comes to Mike Vrabel?
Yeah.
I mean, people are yelling at me, it's not his fault. It's the cap. And now it's like, well, Vrabel's the one who picked that guy. It's like, what? It can't be that simple. Preds Insiders. Preds need to start winning, by the way. Preds Insiders coming up next. Stillman & Company. Press conference tomorrow at 1. We'll see everybody at 2.